All right, you and I are about to dive into a world where divine weapons are only for the privileged. These relics are the soul itself given form, granting every piece of gear its own unique set of skills. House Valerius once slew the Malice Lord, the Great Disaster. Ever since, their children are born with everything. Battle-hardened bodies, genius-level talent, and divine gear that is truly beyond belief. Our main character was born here, dreaming of becoming a hero and wielding his own legendary weapon with pride. Now pay attention, because at the oracle ceremony, his soul weapon is finally supposed to manifest. Instead, he realized he had nothing. It was the first time someone in family history failed, making him their greatest shame. Because of this, they treated him like trash, calling him a public disgrace. His half-brother Silas was a total monster about it. To Silas, a failure who could not summon a weapon did not even deserve to stand on their holy ground. He used that as an excuse to beat the boy's face into the dirt repeatedly. Beatrice and Alina just stood there watching as the brutal assault continued. Beatrice actually loved seeing the pain, while Alina could barely stand to look at what was happening. She tried to step in and stop the beating, but Beatrice tripped her, sending her crashing down. She was forced to watch so she would understand the fate of the weak who have no future. She was never meant to step in or help him. Seeing Beatrice crush his friend's head made him furious, but Silas made sure he stayed focused on the pain of his own brutal beating. The attacker spat that filthy half-bloods should not be so attached to each other. While raining down blows, he kept hurling insults at the boy. Since they were children of commoners, the others constantly treated them like stray dogs. After the beating, he apologized for being too weak to protect her. With a big smile, she told him not to worry because she had promised to always stand by his side, no matter what. But the boy refused to live like this anymore. He vowed to get stronger even without a soul weapon, promising to protect her with his life, no matter what. Holding him tight, she thanked him for making that vow. You and I both know this is just the start. Only a few days later, they banish him from the castle. He was consumed by grief and pure rage, knowing they would persecute her next. He had to get strong enough to come back and take her away from that hell. Mastering basic steel was useless against a knight wielding a soul manifestation. He had to push beyond his limits. With no other choice, he dropped a bag of gold on a shop counter. Flaunting the coins, he demanded one of every single weapon in the shop. The smith thought the kid was starting a war. 2 years passed since he left House Valerius behind. Riding out, his journey continued. He had learned much, but he still lacked a divine weapon. Dangerous monsters stood in his way. Luckily, he had an entire arsenal ready for them. He was ready to fight because he had mastered every single weapon, becoming a true beast. He even had a pistol perfect for collecting debts from lowlife scum. Those creatures did not stand a single chance against him. After the slaughter, a hooded figure watched from the shadows before finally stepping out to speak. He asked if the boy always carried that many blades, wondering if it was because he lacked a soul weapon. He was searching for someone he could truly trust, someone with the potential to become the world's next hero. The protagonist had only one thought about this weird stranger. The man's words sounded like total madness. Suddenly, a blue light erupted from his hand, firing energy toward the boy. A glowing object appeared. It looked like a weapon, leaving the boy completely stunned by the sight. The man said he would trust him with this gift. Embedded in the earth, the object hummed with power. He thought it was a sword and reached out to grab it with his hand. He realized that what he had received was actually just the sword's scabbard. The holy sheath of Avalon, a divine relic that allows its user to store weapons and pass them to another person. Passed down through the ages. It holds the blades of history's 5 greatest legends. And trust me, you and I just watched him get the very best weapons on Earth. Stick with me. You're about to see how a boy's obsession with a relic changes everything over 3 long years. He stood alongside his mentor as a dragon tore across the sky, charging toward them with pure, murderous rage. The beast stoked its hellfire, prepared to wipe every living soul right off the face of the kingdom. But our hero didn't flinch at the heat. He summoned Avalon, and instantly, a holy white sheath materialized in his grip. Gripping it like a sword ready for battle, he focused his will and commanded the relic's true power to wake up. The sacred item erupts in a blinding light, and from within the glow, a legendary shield forged of pure energy takes shape right in his hand. It was a barrier strong enough to halt the dragon's lethal attack dead in its tracks. Now pay attention. He summons the legendary storm hammer to strike back. Ready to crush the beast, he leaps high into the air, bringing the hammer down for one final, massive blow. The impact was brutal, slamming the dragon's head deep into the earth. One hit. His master confirms he finally mastered Avalon. His master finally gives the word, "Go find your sister." Not even the strongest S-tier paladin in the kingdom can stop you now. Hope flares in his eyes. Overflowing with joy, he vows to set off and do exactly as he was told. 5 years since his exile, and now, he finally has the power to bring his sister home. He races forward, praying Sarah is safe as he nears the hellhole where she's been trapped for all these years. But when he arrives, horror strikes, fire has swallowed everything. Panic sets in as he realizes something has gone terribly wrong. Through the thick smoke and flames, he spots war banners rising. He recognizes those crests instantly. They belong to Duke Rothwind. A brutal civil war has broken out, and it's a total nightmare. He sprints into the castle, screaming for his sister. He reaches a massive, heavy gate left slightly ajar. Stepping inside, his heart shatters. There, lying broken on the cold floor, is a mangled body. He can't believe it's real. It's his sister, Sarah. He pulls her into his arms, trembling with fear. She doesn't move. She doesn't breathe. The unthinkable has already happened. He remembers every word they shared and every promise he just broke. Devastated, a haunting scream of pure despair echoes through the burning halls. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. After all that work, he failed the one person who mattered. Suddenly, a bolt of pure energy streaks through the air, piercing right through the boy's chest. His chest is ripped open. There's another shadow in the room, radiating a dark, suffocating mana that can only belong to an elite S-tier warrior. The killer recognizes him immediately. It's Belian, the boy who was cast out from the house years ago. Belian doesn't understand how he was identified, but it doesn't matter now. The killer is about to send him to the afterlife to join his sister. This monster standing right here is definitely the one who took his sister's life. The assassin raises his blade to finish the job, laughing at the hero who's now drowning in grief. Broken and bleeding out, he has no strength left to fight back. The blade drives deeper. Everything goes dark until suddenly he wakes up standing before a priest again. Staring at his hands, he's baffled. Then he sees it, the familiar glow of the cathedral's stained glass windows. He's back in the family cathedral mid-ceremony, even though he's certain he just died. There's only one explanation for this ceremony. He has somehow traveled back in time. The priest tells him to pray and visualize his sacred weapon, but he remembers how this went last time. He hadn't inherited Avalon yet in this timeline. He's already bracing for the exile that started his journey. But this time, something changes that leaves him absolutely stunned. That's definitely Avalon appearing before him. This time, he won't make the same mistakes. With his future knowledge and this power, he's going to rewrite fate. His real life starts right now. The boy gazes at the sheath, fully aware of the godlike potential it holds. It's such a strange sight that even the high priest, who's seen every relic imaginable, is left completely stunned. He already knows exactly what the priest is going to say next. A sheath isn't a weapon, but surprisingly, the priest has something else entirely on his mind. The boy just smiles, radiating confidence. He knows this sheath is actually the ultimate divine weapon. He marches through the castle halls, desperately searching for the sister he lost. If the reset is real, she's alive. His memories are raw, and the fear for Sarah's safety is overwhelming. He reaches the door. Now, you and I are about to see if he can truly change fate. All right, you and I are about to watch a brother's second chance at saving the person he loves most. Surprised to see her brother, the young lady rushed over for a warm embrace, eager to hear every detail about his knighting ceremony. Arthur stayed silent, overwhelmed with joy just to hold her again. The embrace was so desperate that Sarah began to worry about his well-being. He was still haunted by the crushing regret of failing to protect her in his first life. The memory of that agony was still far too vivid for him. He swore his sister would never face that darkness again, finally fulfilling his most sacred oath. It wasn't long before the girl started complaining about his bone-crushing hug. It was a bit too tight, but she didn't mind. She was just happy to see him until she noticed something strange on his face. Tears were pouring from his eyes, and she had no clue what was causing his sudden breakdown. Gently stroking his hair, she promised that everything would be okay because they still had each other. Those sweet words truly warmed the boy's soul. They had grown up together in the borderlands of 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒏, but the peace was shattered when his arrogant brother barged in. He had been searching for Sarah for a while. That was Cedric, the most miserable noble in the entire kingdom. The little brat claimed he'd already heard the gossip. His half-brother had apparently received a very strange relic during the knighting ceremony. The high priest was a notorious gossip who loved meddling. Arthur confirmed he had only received a sheath, and Cedric couldn't hide his sneer. Laughing like a fool, he mocked that a sheath wasn't a weapon, saying it suited a loser like Arthur perfectly. He claimed Arthur could never fight with such junk, calling the siblings a pair of absolute idiots for even trying. Arthur clenched his fists tight. He was seriously tempted to rearrange the little brat's teeth right then and there. Instead, he gave the prick one chance to take it back, but the arrogant noble didn't realize how much danger he was in. Cedric wasn't used to his low-born brother biting back. Arthur stood his ground and gave him one final warning to apologize immediately. Now pay attention. Cedric's hatred is boiling over. He's about to try and teach Arthur a lesson that he will never, ever forget. Too bad for him, because Arthur had years of brutal training from a legendary master under his belt. Arthur buried a heavy strike right into the brat's gut, making sure he would have plenty of time to regret his words. The poor kid barely managed not to lose his lunch, but only because his expensive meal had already been digested. He collapsed onto the floor, curled up in pure agony as his body shut down from that single, brutal liver shot. Arthur just looked down. Arthur warned him never to threaten Sarah again, or he'd personally educate the brat in some proper knightly manners. Fuming with rage, Cedric spat out another insult. He was ready to take this fight to a much more dangerous level. Summoning his divine weapon, he vowed to make Arthur beg for mercy while he scorched every inch of his skin. If this brat really wanted a life or death duel, then so be it. Arthur calmly told Sarah to stay back and watch. Trust me, things are about to get wild. Arthur reassures Sarah that everything is under control and he will handle this with ease. Gearing up for combat, he summoned the legendary Avalon. He was finally ready to use the power of the mysterious sheath. Cedric laughed, refusing to believe he could lose to a mere sheath. After all, he was already an E-rank paladin of the house. He claimed a low-born would never stand a chance. Now, keep in mind, paladins are strictly divided by their power ranks. Strength is everything here. Once someone receives their divine weapon, they're automatically classified as a basic rank F warrior. By channeling mana into their gear, they advance to rank E status. From rank D and above, mana allows for devastating special attacks. To surpass rank B, a warrior must master the unique, secret abilities of their legendary equipment. It was honestly pathetic that the brat was bragging about being rank E. He still had a massive mountain left to climb. Arthur wasn't even slightly worried. His absolute confidence only served to drive Cedric even further into a blind, murderous rage. Arthur pushed further, mockingly calling his brother cute. That was the final straw. Cedric lunged, ready to strike the low-born with all his overwhelming power. Sarah grew terrified, certain this duel was about to take a very dangerous turn. Gripping the sheath tight, Arthur invoked the Blade of Light. In a flash, the legendary 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓 appeared, a truly terrifying weapon. Cedric was stunned. His flaming sword was useless against that pressure. He didn't even recognize the legendary weapon Arthur was now wielding. A single counterattack sent the arrogant brat flying backward off his feet. Shockingly, his own divine weapon was sliced clean through. Cedric stared in pure terror, realizing he'd been completely outmatched by his brother's power. He couldn't understand what just happened. He was positive that sheath was empty just a few minutes ago. Approaching the fallen noble, Arthur asked if he'd had enough, or if he'd like to start begging for his life now. Like a pathetic sore loser, he cried foul. And that's where we leave it. You and I just saw the start of a legendary revenge. If that coward had known the truth, he never would have attacked. He even tried to bluff, swearing he would not forget this humiliation. Stick with me, because this coward is about to learn a lesson he will never forget. He fled in terror, clothes shredded, with Alistair right on his heels. It was not over yet. Alistair drew a flame-spitting flintlock called Cinderbrand. Aiming right at the fool, he let out a single, thunderous blast. The pathetic soul tried to run. Now watch this. The bullet missed by an inch on purpose. Seeing the smoking hole in the wall, the brat's terror hit a whole new level. Nothing made sense anymore. How could a simple boy suddenly wield a completely different weapon of war? He had just used a legendary sword. It was supposed to be impossible to manifest more than one sacred relic. Alistair warned him to remember this moment. Never touch Seraphina again. From now on, his fate was in his own hands. The brat had no dignity left to lose. His paralyzing fear only continued to spiral out of control. With the cold eyes of a debt collector, Alistair warned that his next mistake would earn him a bullet between the eyes. Terrified, the coward bolted to save his skin, while Alistair calmly vanished his sacred relic into thin air. Seraphina watched everything, her eyes wide with pure amazement. She was safe, but wondered if those were his relics. He reminded her to trust him with everything. She thought it was incredible, and Alistair's only goal was to keep that innocent smile safe forever. He swore he would never lose anyone again. Meanwhile, the brat went running to report the incident. He went straight to the Duke, crying that he had been humiliated like a common stray dog. The Duke was fascinated that Alistair held multiple relics. The brat screamed that this was dark magic. He claimed Alistair made a pact with an underworld demon and demanded his immediate exile from the kingdom. But the Duke did not care. He was obsessed with the potential of having such a powerful heir. Leaving his throne, he ignored the brat's cries. When asked where he was going, he said he was seeing Alistair. He had to see for himself if these rumors were actually true. Let us pause for a second. Winning a fight in a kid's body takes a massive toll. Alistair collapsed onto his bed, needing time to recover. He was drained, still struggling to master the immense ether flowing through his young veins. That last blast should have been magical fire, but it was just lead. He was still only rank F. He had to grow stronger fast. Recalling the recent battle, he recognized the crest of House Windermere. That symbol marked their ancient rivals. The blood feud between their noble houses went back centuries. Any small spark could ignite a war, and he was certain the assassin was one of theirs. This time, everything changes. He will protect his sister, but he must first earn the respect of his house. Suddenly, his chamber doors burst open. Alistair looked up to see who dared to enter. It had been ages since their last meeting. He had no clue why the Duke was here now. Duke Valerius was a legend who had faced a dark god alone 20 years ago during the Great War. Known as the Sword Singer, he carved a path through the dark lands alone. Right behind him stood the coward Julian. Suddenly, the reason for his father's unexpected visit became crystal clear. He was being accused, but this was his big chance. To gain power, he had to impress the Duke. Bowing low, he greeted the Duke. The old man remarked how much Alistair had changed since their last encounter. But today, he claimed he was visiting as a father and told the boy to stand at ease. With surprising maturity, Alistair refused. One wrong word could be fatal, and he owed the Duke absolute discipline. The Duke was secretly impressed by the sudden wisdom shown by his once troublesome young son. He ordered the boy to stand. Fine, if he wanted formality, Valerius would remain here as his sovereign duke. Suddenly, the room felt heavy with terrifying pressure. The Duke growled that fighting among brothers was strictly forbidden. Alastair looked regretful, making Julian smirk, thinking his brother was finally about to get what he deserved. Normally, no one could stand under the Duke's aura, but the boy did not even flinch. He calmly explained that he and his sister were the ones being harassed. The Duke asked if his laws were really broken over a simple childhood squabble. Alastair stood his ground without regret. When asked if he feared punishment, he replied that for a true knight, abandoning family is an even greater disgrace. You and I just witnessed the birth of a legend. All right, let's dive into a story where family loyalty is tested by the edge of a blade. The Duke watched intently as the boy stood firm, choosing the path of a true knight. His father leveled a sword at his throat, demanding to know if he'd strike his own blood. Without a flinch, the boy faced the Duke's crushing pressure, earning the old man's hidden respect. The Duke declared he would let this little rebellion slide for now. Zane was fuming. The Duke was utterly disgusted that his eldest son had harassed his sister only to lose the fight anyway. The Duke barked at the pathetic loser to hide his face in shame and leave at once. He recognized Belle's resolve, knowing it took guts to speak up despite the lethal consequences. The boy apologized for being so reckless during the confrontation. But his father grinned. This was the fire he expected from a night of calamity. Now, show me your true power. Now pay attention here. As a blue light erupts from his hands, we're about to see a divine armament that will change everything. A legendary sheath appeared, but the Duke was baffled by its strange, empty form. Tales spoke of Avalon, the weapon that once carried the soul of the first paladin. The Duke asked if the boy truly wielded both a blade and a black powder firearm. Belle confirmed it, showing his father that both weapons were housed inside the magical sheath. The Duke was absolutely stunned by his son's potential. How could one boy wield so much, especially with 3 more legendary weapons still hidden deep inside that magical sheath? This boy was clearly destined to become the realm's next great hero. He told him he had no interest in the weak, but his expectations for the boy's future were now sky-high. As his father left, the boy collapsed in relief. The doors finally closed, and the crushing pressure of the Duke's presence finally began to fade. He needed to grow stronger, but this child's body was holding his power back. To reach D rank, he had to head into the forest and hunt some orcs. Soon, the first monster fell, its severed head rolling across the damp forest floor. The slaughter didn't stop with one kill. Something far more dangerous was stalking these woods, and no monster was safe from its wrath. A massive beast let out a deafening roar, its teeth as sharp as forged steel. These woods felt nostalgic. He had spent years training here during his previous life. But something was wrong. The forest was too quiet, and the monsters were all missing. Then he saw them, orcs torn to shreds, their bodies scattered like trash in the bushes. The scene was pure carnage, a terrifying display of raw, animalistic power. Suddenly, a low growl echoed behind him. The boy turned, his heart skipping a beat. A massive force slammed into him, sending him flying through the air like a rag doll. You and I saw that coming, right? This isn't some stray dog, it's Fenrir, the D-rank monster ruling this entire forest. He was stuck at E-rank with low mana against a D-rank monster. One look into those glowing eyes told him the beast was ready to kill. He had to focus, or he'd end up as nothing more than wolf food. The monster lunged with impossible speed, forcing him to dive for his life. He summoned his fire pistol and unloaded a barrage, but the beast dodged every single shot with ease. He was in deep trouble now. Without enough mana to boost the speed, his bullets were completely useless here. Switching to his sword, he charged, narrowly avoiding a swipe from those massive claws. He slipped through the beast's guard, finding a tiny opening for a counterattack. He lunged forward, but the wolf moved with grace that defied its massive size. He was in real trouble. If he had his old power, this dog would be dead. The wolf lunged again, its speed far beyond what his young body could handle. He raised his blade to block, but the sheer force rattled his entire skeleton. Cornered and exhausted, he couldn't escape the next wave of vicious attacks. Trust me, you and I are about to see if he can survive this. After reincarnating, he won't let his new life end as a wolf's afternoon snack. He had to summon the shield of Achilles. It was his only way to block and strike back. All right, you and I are about to see this go south. The beast is too fast and slams into his side. If he does not change things up fast, he's going to end up as this monster's next snack. His current weapons are completely useless, and that heavy hammer, it is way too slow to catch a monster this fast. He only has one card left to play. It is risky, but he has to use it right now. The beast lunges for the kill. The boy closes his eyes, focuses, and calls forth the legendary Aegis. The monster's claws strike, but then nothing happens. The impact just stops. A dark gauntlet now wraps his hand in shadow. He didn't want this power, but dying again isn't an option. The beast snarls, gearing up for another strike. This time it is moving even faster than before. But the fight is already over. The boy's speed is unreal now, and he is already hovering above the monster. The creature cannot even track him. That hammer is coming down hard to crush some skull. A bone-shattering blow lands, sending the beast into agony as its entire jaw gets rearranged. Now here is the crazy part. Aegis isn't a shield, it is a gauntlet of pure darkness. It grants insane strength, but there is a voice inside, whispering to destroy everything in sight. The longer he holds it, the stronger he gets, and the more he wants to take lives. He is just toying with the beast now, dodging every swipe with a smirk. He is totally enjoying himself. Finally, the wolf is sent straight back to the underworld. He is relieved to end it quickly. That cursed weapon cannot be put away in battle, and it drags the user deep into the dark. Now he's got to wonder, what was a high-level Fenris wolf doing in these woods? Wait, look at the hammer. It's glowing. It is completely surged with new, raw energy. By killing that beast, he is now able to use its unique attributes. Hunting big prey beats weak monsters any day. He cannot wait to test this out. Let's head back to the castle garden, where his sister, Sarah, is finishing up a beautiful flower crown. She hopes her brother likes it, but suddenly, someone rips it right out of her hands. It is Jessica. She sneers that the crown is hideous, just like the filthy, low-born girl who made it. She looks to Spencer, her weird lackey, for backup, and of course, he is just there to obey her. She tosses the crown up, and Spencer immediately shreds it to pieces with his whip. Sarah is heartbroken and helpless. Meanwhile, Jessica is just bored, looking for more trouble to cause. She draws her weapon on Sarah, claiming she needs target practice. She actually fires a shot, sending the poor girl cowering in pure terror. But then, clink, Bell steps in, blocking the shot with nothing but the sheath of his sword. Sarah is stunned. She didn't even hear him come in. He was like a ghost. Bell tells Jessica he's looking for a reason to test his new gear. She has no idea what is happening. She just sneers and calls him a stray mutt. Bell ignores her to comfort his sister, then turns back to deal with this arrogant girl. Spencer tries to look tough, but Bell sees right through him. He knows the guy is just Jessica's loyal servant. He stands tall, reminding them that he is the proud son of the great Duke himself. Spencer spits back that he is just the son of a concubine. That definitely struck a nerve with him. Jessica thinks he only beat Zane by luck. They're convinced he is still that same weak kid, and that Zane was just careless. To them, using a sheath as a weapon just proves he is the weakest of the weak. He closes his eyes and tells her to watch closely. Luck or talent, she is about to find out. She gets nervous and orders Spencer to take out the trash immediately, something he's happy to do. His whip freezes everything it touches, but Bell is not impressed. Spencer is a D-rank paladin, think mid-level, with an ice whip. He's way above an E-rank nobody. He laughs, promising to freeze Belle's legs so the poor guy cannot even run away. And trust me, you and I are going to want to see how Belle handles this icy threat next time. Alastair sneered. You talk too much. Now, you and I get to see a side character learn his place. Sterling warned him not to underestimate him, aiming to freeze him solid. But Alastair dodged the strike effortlessly. Beatrice was stunned. For a low-tier knight, he was moving well, yet she still saw him as a mere commoner. The hero had actually trained relentlessly throughout his entire past life. This was child's play to him. Seraphina watched in awe as her brother practically danced around the attacks. Sterling was fuming, yelling that Alastair only knew how to run. So Alastair decided to stop his retreat. He stopped dodging entirely. Every witness was left speechless by his sudden, overwhelming surge of confidence. Alastair challenged the fool to actually land a hit. Sterling took the bait and charged forward in a rage. He tried to freeze him completely. The whip struck Alastair, who stood with open arms, taking every single blow. Seraphina watched in terror as frost crept up. Soon, Alastair's limbs were completely encased in solid ice. Sterling aimed for the face, but Alastair just asked if that was his best. Now it was his turn to strike. Now pay attention. Alastair is about to summon his legendary weapon, Ragnarok. His scabbard began to glow as a mystical firearm appeared. Sterling couldn't believe it. 2 divine weapons in one hand. To shatter the frost, Alastair surged with mana. Pure, searing fire began to erupt from the barrel of his gun. Just like that, he was free. Beatrice watched in total disbelief as the ice shattered into pieces. 2 weapons and perfect elemental mastery. It was unheard of. Now it was time to finally punish this arrogant brat. He fired a blast of intense fire. Sterling knew right then he was in massive trouble. He tried to hide behind an ice shield, coating himself in frost. He actually thought it would stop the flames. Alastair knew this wouldn't even be a challenge. The fire didn't slow down for even a second. The bullet ripped right through the ice block. Sterling realized he was about to be absolutely crushed. The projectile slammed into his chest with immense power. It didn't pierce him, but the shockwave did heavy damage. He collapsed into the dirt while Beatrice watched in horror. A lowly boy had just defeated a high-tier knight. You and I can see she's terrified, knowing she doesn't stand a chance. Alastair turned his gaze toward her. She summoned her own weapon, screaming for him to stay back, but her hands were shaking too much to aim. She fired multiple shots wildly, missing every single one as she panicked in front of him. She begged him to stop, but her legs gave out. She fell, consumed by pure, unfiltered terror. Alastair stood over her like a shadow as Beatrice's terror grew. He could have ended her then. Instead, he gave a stern warning, never touch Seraphina again. Paralyzed by fear, she could only scramble away. Seraphina immediately ran to her brother, overwhelmed with gratitude. She asked if the whip had hurt him, but he just laughed. To him, Sterling was just pitifully weak. She praised his incredible strength, but he told her he only became this strong to always protect her. She placed a new flower crown on his head, thanking him for being her guardian. This one mattered more. Alastair looked at the gift. One day, he vowed the entire kingdom would revere his sister's kind soul. The problem? The nobility looked down on children of concubines. Raising their status would be an uphill battle. He needed to earn their respect. To do that, there was one goal he had to reach immediately. Outside the palace, the Duke sat in deep meditation, sword in hand. His focus was like a sharpened blade. He stood up, slicing through falling leaves with perfect precision. Only then did he notice Alastair standing nearby. He asked what the boy wanted. Alastair had come to ask a favor from the powerful Duke. The Duke waited to hear his wish. Before speaking, Alastair dropped to one knee in total respect. The Duke was impressed by the formality. Alastair wanted to take the Royal Knight Entrance exam now. He wanted to serve the crown as a true representative of the Duke's noble house. To keep their influence, the family owed the king duty, from escorting royals to hunting monsters. This was the fastest path to power. By completing the hardest missions, he would force the family's recognition. Looking at the boy, the Duke saw a fire of ambition. He knew Alistair was aiming for the top. "But trust me, you and I know it's not that easy." He said it was far too early. Alistair needs to be a real paladin before thinking about the silver rank. Right now, he is just an F rank with a fresh sacred relic. Stick with me here, because we are about to watch this kid prove the Duke completely wrong. Tossing a jagged fang onto the table, Alistair asked if this was enough to finally change his mind. The Duke froze, recognizing it instantly, a frostwolf fang. He demanded to know how a child could possibly hunt such a beast. Without a word, Alistair unsheathed his sacred relic. His heavy hammer was now crackling with intense, violent electricity. The boy admitted it had been a bit difficult at first, but he had tamed that stubborn beast. Seeing the lightning, the Duke realized the boy could already control elemental magic and slay D-rank monsters. The boy was undeniably powerful and deserved a shot at the silver rank exam immediately. He granted permission under one condition: Alistair must not even think about bringing shame to the noble house. Full of confidence, Alistair thanked him and headed to the arena, where a crowd of veteran candidates had already gathered. The silver rank was a wall for many. Now, pay attention, because the other candidates were about to lose it. Most were battle-hardened adults, making the small boy stand out as he walked toward the reception desk. The attendant looked down, asking if he was lost or looking for his father. She was stunned to hear he was there to test himself, suggesting he go home and come back when he was older. Alistair told her not to treat him like a child. Suddenly, a voice told him to stop playing pretend. Little kids had no business here and should leave before they got hurt. The protagonist had no idea who this guy was, but he could tell he was going to be a problem. The others knew exactly who he was: Sir Alaric, the currently strongest D-rank knight in the kingdom. His sacred relic, the Gale Blade, was whispered to strike 8 times with every single swing. It was a terrifying ability with many admirers. Alaric sneered that a child should at least be on his level before trying. Alistair didn't care about the man's fame or what the other candidates thought. Alaric doubted the boy even had a weapon. Grabbing the sheath at his hip, Alistair said it was right there. Seeing only a sheath, the young knight began to laugh at the pathetic sight. He mocked the idea of fighting with such trash, and the surrounding crowd joined in the laughter. They couldn't believe a sacred relic could look so useless, and felt glad they weren't that pathetic. Alaric didn't care if an ignorant child threw his life away, but being placed in the same rank as this kid felt like a total insult. As he walked away, he told the little piece of trash to go back to his mother. Ignoring the noise, Alistair told the secretary to register him for the exam right now. She asked if he was truly sure, explaining he needed a recommendation from a B-rank knight and a high enough personal rank. He handed over a letter that would clear up any doubts about his eligibility. The girl assumed no elite knight would ever recommend a mere child. But her jaw dropped when she saw the seal. It was a personal recommendation from the Duke of Ravensmoor himself. She realized he was the Duke's son. You and I both know the rest of the candidates are not ready for him. The instructor explained the rules. They would be sent into a dangerous dungeon using a powerful teleportation stone. They had 5 hours to navigate the depths and return with a jewel of light. There were only 3 jewels hidden inside. Only those who managed to bring one back would earn their promotion. The arrogant knight was certain that he was destined to walk away as a winner. While the others looked terrified, Alistair just felt embarrassed for the man's ego. The instructor asked if they were ready. The crowd roared in excitement, and the exam was officially underway. It was finally time for our main character to step through the teleportation stone. The room glowed intensely as he was pulled through a portal to a completely different world. He landed inside a dark cave. It seemed everyone had been scattered across the first floor. He had to choose a path. The dungeon was massive, but he had plenty of time. Since he was here, it would be a waste not to take full advantage of the situation. The more monsters he defeats, the more his mana grows. And trust me, we are going to love what happens next. All right, stick with me. You and I are about to watch a weak kid humiliate every arrogant noble knight in the room. Inside the crypts, the other candidates were barely surviving against the swarm. These beasts were massive and extremely deadly. Those lizard eyes were filled with a violent hunger, enough to make any knight's blood run cold. Lord Cedric just scoffed, unable to understand why the other squires were struggling against such pathetic prey. He cut them down with a wicked grin, barely breaking a sweat. His flashy swordplay earned him looks of awe as he continued his slaughter. Dripping with pride, he boasted that he was far above average. To be honest, he was bored by the lack of challenge. The others happily followed him just to stay alive. Cedric barked that they were lucky to witness his peerless skill firsthand. And that peasants like them should just stay back. After exploring the crypts, the group reached a massive stone gate. This had to be the final chamber. He hoped for some actual excitement for once. Suddenly, multiple high-rank monsters appeared, guarding 3 glowing jewels resting on an altar at the back of the room. As a beast charged, Cedric felt confident he could slice the monster into ribbons, landing heavy slashes across its chest, but its hide was so thick that his blade didn't even leave a scratch. Now pay attention, because this is where the arrogance finally catches up to him as the creature prepares to strike. The impact was so heavy, it sent him reeling back. He was completely stunned that his best attacks did nothing. Behind him, the other knights were frozen in pure terror. Panic set in as the rest of the pack turned their hungry gaze toward them. The knight from House 𝒂𝒑𝒏 tried to defend himself, striking a monster only to realize his physical strength was completely useless against its ghostly form. Nearby, the lady knight struggled against a soaring winged beast. This monster rained down sharp feathers, keeping her pinned down from a distance. Cedric finally understood the true horror of this trial. Every monster here was designed to counter their specific sacred relics. Powerless against the stone titan, he closed his eyes and waited for the end to come. But suddenly, the massive creature exploded into dust before it could crush the fallen knight. He looked up in shock. Alistair had arrived. A second later and it would have been a massacre. The boy looked like he was having fun, but Cedric only saw the useless brat who shouldn't be here. A ghost-like monster lunged at him. Alistair immediately switched his stance to deal with the spirit. Cedric's jaw dropped as he watched the boy's simple sword transform into a holy silver blade. Alistair shattered the spirit with a single blow. Next, he turned his attention to the sky. He pulled out a relic that fired rapid-fire mana bolts, turning the flying beast into a heap of feathers and lead. The other nobles couldn't believe this kid was actually a monster in disguise. You and I both saw that, right? That plain sheath hiding a literal arsenal of legendary weapons. He showed perfect mastery over every single one. With time running out, he moved to finish the job. Watching from the floor, the arrogant Cedric couldn't process how a child could possess such overwhelming skill. While he sat there frozen, our hero kept clearing the room. With the monsters dead, he walked toward the altar to claim one of the 3 prize jewels. The other squires rushed over to start flattery, which Alistair found more annoying than the monsters. They instantly showed their true colors, mocking the very man they were worshipping just a few minutes ago. They told Cedric he was absolute garbage compared to Alistair, and that they were wrong to ever follow him. Cedric's pride was utterly destroyed. The 2 cowards moved forward, thinking they would just take the remaining jewels. Without a word, Alistair summoned a massive warhammer. He already had his prize, so he decided to do something truly satisfying. He brought the hammer down on the altar with earth-shattering force. The 2 leeches screamed in horror, asking what the hell he was doing. He had pulverized the other jewels. Holding up the last one, he told them if they wanted it so badly, they would have to take it from him. He added that they were nothing but talentless parasites who only knew how to feed off others. So what do you and I take from this? True knights are defined by honor, not titles. Let's dive in as Arthur humbles these elite knights, leaving their shattered egos behind as he walks away. Julian seemed to have actually learned something from that brutal reality check. He finally recognized his weaknesses, admitting his own arrogance and even thanking Arthur for the lesson, though he refused to let this be his downfall. Our hero found his honesty and ambition surprising, knowing their paths would cross again. Outside, the boy finally celebrated his win. He was finally a Tier 3 knight. Plus, after hunting so many monsters, his mana reserves had grown significantly. Now he just needed to earn respect within his own noble house to keep his sister safe. Finally, he reached the Duke's estate to share the news, but his father was already deep in a serious war council. Traitors were plotting to overthrow House Valerius. 3 Tier 2 paladins were closing in, and the Duke's family had to take them out. It looked like another noble house had already suffered at the hands of these rogue paladins. Dark rumors claimed these knights had cursed their blades with forbidden, ancient magic. The Tier 2 paladins finally realized why they were being hunted. The Duke declared that this cycle of chaos had to end. They had to be wiped out immediately, but one knight noticed a seat was empty. Alistair was missing from the council. Now pay attention here. Alistair slams a book down, demanding to know what the meeting is about while everyone turns in shock. The young man announced that the enemy was already destroyed, and it was all because of him. The man who would become the next Duke of House Valerius. Meanwhile, a cold maid brought a meal to her lady, informing her that the food had finally arrived. Alice prepares to sit at the table. Being polite, she thanked the maid, who just ignored her and walked out. Alice looked absolutely heartbroken by the treatment. She stared at her food without any appetite until her brother suddenly burst in, announcing his return. He looked at her with pure joy, and Alice beamed back, though she was worried sick about where he had gone. Arthur told her he was busy with something important and had brought her gifts. Now, a massive feast sits on the table. Alice was thrilled with the apple pie he brought, hoping to share every bite with her big brother. You and I both know this hits hard. The servants treat them like garbage just because they are children of a concubine. He needed to work twice as hard to give his sister the life she actually deserved. Back in the War Council, the Duke was stunned that his son had taken down the enemy group all by himself. This meant Alistair had already reached Tier 1. As the Duke's firstborn, his power was simply on another level. He took his seat at the table, casually asking if his father had any other business to discuss. The Duke explained the king's new mission. House Valerius was tasked with escorting Princess Elizabeth. She was passing through nearby lands, and they needed to ensure her safety. One knight questioned why the royal guard wasn't enough. Another argued they should keep the enemy's total defeat a secret from the crown for now. They decided the safest path was through Redbridge, but while they plotted, another voice interrupted the hall. The boy asked them to wait before deciding. Every eye in the room turned toward Arthur. The Duke couldn't hide his pride in his son's talent, seeing that his exam was finally finished. Showing off his certificate, the boy confirmed he was now a Tier 3 knight. Reaching this rank so young was simply unheard of. The Duke asked why he had interrupted them, and Arthur suggested a completely different route for the princess. One of the knights scoffed, surprised that a mere child would dare offer a suggestion. The Redbridge route had no monsters, but it was crawling with bandits and would take 3 full days. He argued it would be much better to cut through the monster plains instead. A knight warned that the area was far too dangerous, but Arthur knew every monster that lived there, specifically the chimera and shadow horrors. Since those are nocturnal beasts, traveling during the day would actually be much safer for the carriage. Plus, it would only take 1 day to reach their destination. The knight had no choice but to agree. Hearing this, the Duke realized his son was sharp and knew his monsters. Now, he wanted the council's opinion. Arthur wanted the mission for himself, confident he could escort the princess without a single scratch. His bold stance left the Duke deep in thought. That's when Alistair finally decided to join the conversation. A terrifying energy flooded the room. He spat out, asking why this lowly mutt was even speaking to them. And that's where we leave it. Arthur and Alistair are about to clash, and trust me, You won't want to miss what's next. Stick with me. You and I are about to watch a young knight prove everyone wrong today. Drawing his sacred blade, he declared his intent to protect the princess and escort her safely, no matter the cost. Intrigued by the boy's confidence, Lord Alastair asked if he actually thought he could stop him. Julian swore a knight's word is iron, but Alastair's man barked for him to shut his mouth immediately. This was Sir Roland, his brother's right hand and a formidable rank B paladin. Alastair ordered Roland to test the boy, while he himself prepared his holy weapon to absolutely crush the child. He was determined to put this low-born bastard in his place once and for all. Now pay attention here, because Julian is about to show us exactly what he is made of. As the knight lunged with the first strike, Julian realized this duel would be harder than he imagined. Yet he parried the blow with precision, leaving the veteran knight visibly stunned by his skill. Alastair watched, impressed. It was fast, but he knew the boy couldn't best a rank B paladin just yet. With a booming voice, the Duke intervened, declaring the test over and officially appointing Julian to the mission. Sir Roland hesitated, asking if His Grace was truly serious about this choice. Since Alastair had already cleared the local threats, this seemed like a perfect first trial for the boy. Julian bowed in thanks, promising success, while Alastair watched him with a dark and very calculating smile. Julian's journey led him toward the royal palace, a place he had never stepped foot in before. At the gates, the guards blocked his path, sneering that a child couldn't simply walk into the citadel. He presented his paladin certificate, calmly informing them he was assigned as the princess's own personal escort. Shocked that a child could reach rank C, they reluctantly stepped aside and allowed him entry now. The guards whispered doubts about his strength, but Julian marched forward with unwavering resolve. Finally, Princess Alina's carriage arrived. She called him cute, but insisted she didn't actually need his protection. Deep within the throne room, the king demanded to know if his daughter had finally departed. His advisor confirmed she was on the road, guarded by royal soldiers and the Duke's own youngest son. He recalled hearing that the boy, Julian, was still little more than a child. Sensing great potential, he ordered his servant to be wary and use their secret weapon if necessary. Flourishing hidden blades, the servant claimed he could erase anyone before they even realized they were dead today. The carriage rolled on, carrying the princess, Julian, and the royal guard through the kingdom. This mission was simple but vital, as its success would secure a future for his sister, Alara. You and I both know this carriage ride is about to get really awkward, right? Risking a blunt question, he asked the princess why she felt his presence was so unnecessary. She paused before answering, coldly stating that she loathed depending on anyone else for her safety. Boasting of her own weapon, Julian realized she was far more arrogant than he had first assumed. As Alina watched the commoners outside, a spark of genuine wonder finally lit up her face. Seeing her excitement, Julian smiled, but the princess immediately recoiled, feeling uncomfortable with his gaze. He apologized, noting that she reminded him deeply of his young sister. He was sure Alara would have reacted the same way, prompting Alina to ask about their bond. Julian spoke of their simple games together, describing the beautiful, innocent life they shared at the estate. Alina lamented that she had many siblings, but could trust absolutely none of them in the palace. Feeling pity, Julian admitted that his own household was filled with similar, bitter betrayals. His highborn siblings persecuted them because of their mother's status, leaving them with no one to protect them. The princess listened as Julian offered to be a loyal confidant, someone she could truly trust. However, she snapped back, refusing to rely on anyone, especially a boy of his standing. She claimed he couldn't understand her burden, completely unaware they were being hunted from the shadows outside. Night fell as they finally reached the destination, completing the first leg of their journey on schedule. And trust me, you and I are definitely going to want to see who this stranger is. All right, you and I are jumping into a world where a knight named Peter is welcoming our princess home. Belle had heard that name somewhere before, but she just couldn't put her finger on it. Everything felt wrong about being met outside the city walls. Little did they know, an ambush was already in place, waiting for the princess and her entire escort to be totally exposed. Even with all these guards around, the boy could tell the air was thick with hidden danger. Suddenly, a dagger flies through the air. Out here in the open, the princess is a sitting duck. He moves in a flash, summoning his divine armament to shield her. The guards are completely caught off guard. It is a full-on assassination attempt. Daggers are raining down on the princess, and the sheer number of them is a massive problem. Peter steps up too, drawing his blade and showing off some seriously impressive sword skills to keep her safe. He acts like her sworn protector, and Belle realizes this guy is at least level B. The assassins have no choice but to retreat. The ambush failed, so Peter sends his men to hunt them down while he personally escorts the princess to the castle. Belle stays behind, watching them leave with a heavy pit in her stomach. Something is definitely not right here. Inside the walls, they tell the princess she's safe now, but she's not some damsel. She says she can handle herself. While the guard promises protection, his throat is slit in one brutal, sudden motion. Now, check this out. The princess is terrified when she realizes her savior, Peter, is actually the one who did it. The real monster was standing right beside her. He looks at the guard who just died, knowing that sacrifice was completely in vain. The princess is trapped. Peter looks her dead in the eye and tells her that her life ends right now. She claimed she could fight, but in the face of this overwhelming malice, she is left totally defenseless. The knight stalks toward her, and the sheer terror is so paralyzing she can't even summon her divine weapon. Peter drops the act, revealing a twisted, horrifying smile. Just when things look hopeless, the window suddenly shatters into pieces. Peter is stunned. One of his elite men is down, and the boy from the escort is the one standing there. Out of everyone who could have saved her, the princess never expected this kid to be the one taking charge. He calmly apologizes for the delay and steps through the shattered window like it is nothing. He looks at the princess and tells her to relax, because from here on out, this job belongs to him. Peter thought his plan to lure the guards away worked perfectly. He honestly doesn't believe a child can even touch him. But here's the twist you and I were waiting for. Belle finally remembers this man's real name, Von Wiggle. The knight is absolutely floored. He never imagined a mere child would know his secret divine armament consisted of 3 thunder dice. This man is a monster who has murdered counts and even managed to bring down a powerful marquis. He demands to know how the boy discovered his secret past. In his previous life, our hero was the legendary knight who finally brought him to justice. He never thought he'd have to protect the princess from this man, but fate has a funny way of working. The boy never imagined he would be protecting the princess from this man, but now, Peter won't escape his fate. The knight feels strangely intimidated by this child, though he still claims this is a very interesting situation. He thinks he's safe, because a child could never defeat a level B paladin, no matter how much they know. And honestly, for anyone else, this would be an impossible, insurmountable challenge. But since his opponent is Peter, the boy knows this won't be difficult at all. Furious at the kid's sheer audacity, Peter snarls that he's going to make him regret every single word. The boy already knows the opening move. Peter throws his set of daggers, exactly like he did in the past. The boy dodges every single blade with ease. He knows exactly when the surprise diagonal slash is coming. Peter is left gaping. He missed every single strike, and he can't understand how this is even happening. The boy predicts a back attack and prepares his hand to summon his own divine armament. He blocks the strike perfectly. Every single one of Peter's moves is already burned into his memory. Peter can't believe this little wretch is matching his speed. Belle says the kid could end this whenever he wants. He tells the knight to surrender now if he values his life, but Peter is already blinded by pure rage. Underestimating the kid was his first mistake. Now his anger is making every single move way too predictable. He's swinging wildly, fueled by fury, but none of his strikes can even graze the child. The princess is stunned. This small boy is handling a deadly assassin like it is the easiest thing in the world. He shuts down every attack. And trust me, you and I know the princess learned her lesson. All right, you and I are about to see a guard show everyone what he is really made of, and he is finally done playing games. Arthur's first strike against his rival was brutal. Sir Peter had finally been wounded. The assassin realized his moves were being predicted, and he desperately needed a new strategy. His commander's warnings were coming true. This boy was either a natural prodigy or hiding a secret, so he could not afford any more mistakes. Now watch closely, because Peter is about to play his dirtiest trump card. He summoned an impenetrable wall of light and boasted that Arthur would never break through it, but our hero welcomed the challenge with a smile. Peter laughed at his confidence and began to unseal a mysterious, glowing glass vial. Even from a distance, Arthur felt the dread. Those were the legendary tears of the Dragon King. He shattered them on the floor, releasing a rare stimulant that multiplied his mana reserves instantly, granting him overwhelming power for a very short time. Peter vowed to make the boy regret every single second of his foolish caution. He sent his daggers flying again, but the energy behind them had completely changed. The blades were vastly more powerful now, encircling Arthur in a storm of steel until he was completely surrounded by the hovering, glowing metal. Peter tasted victory, believing the young guard was finally finished inside that glowing cage of light. Magnetic forces lifted Arthur into the air as Princess Alara watched her defender with growing terror. He raised his heavy shield, pouring everything he had into a blast of power to shatter the cage. But the gale from his weapon was not enough. Peter was only getting started with his lethal display. The daggers surged with electric current, sending waves of lightning coursing through the entire magical barrier. Inside the field, Arthur screamed in pain. Peter planned to end the boy's life quickly now. I know what you are thinking. Is it over for our hero? Well, look at the arrows flying across the room. They struck the daggers perfectly, causing the light barrier to explode. Only then did Peter realize exactly what was happening around him. The princess had summoned her divine relic. Arthur had risked his very life to buy her time. Alara refused to be a victim any longer. Her sudden interference drove Peter into a blind rage. He lunged forward to kill his victim once and for all, while the princess froze in fear, but Arthur only needed that 1 second. Finally, the assassin realized he was the one in danger, as a deep, crushing blow struck him. It was more than enough. Sir Peter collapsed to the stone floor, completely defeated and unable to move. Once the dust settled, Arthur asked if the princess was unharmed. She looked at him with sadness. She stepped toward him, touching his bruised face and whispering that he was the only one bleeding. She apologized through tears, hating that he was caught in the crossfire of her family's war. But Arthur just smiled, telling her she was every bit as brave as she had once claimed. She laughed softly, promising that she was not as strong as her guard, but she would always stand by his side from now on. Kneeling before her, the boy gave his humble thanks for the princess's life-saving intervention. She looked at him with pure admiration, sliding a ring from her finger as a final gift. It was a token of their bond. Arthur knew this was no ordinary piece of royal jewelry. Mission complete, no lives lost. Arthur was soon received by the Duke of 𝒂𝒔𝒐𝒏. The Duke listened to the reports of the princess's safety, and while he was pleased with the success, he noticed something incredible on the boy's hand. There it was, the legendary Ring of Solomon. It was a royal treasure and a massive source of mana, a symbol of the princess's absolute trust. It was truly unbelievable that a mere commoner guard had obtained such a relic. Arthur was more impressive than the Duke ever imagined, and he could not hide his grin. He told Arthur he was being sent to St. Athena's Academy, the elite school for high paladins. Usually, that prestigious school was only open to the most powerful noble houses. Tradition said only those destined to lead their families could ever attend its hallowed halls. This meant he was finally being recognized as a true heir to the great house of 𝒂𝒂𝒏. Trust me, You and I will want to hear the request he makes before he leaves." The doors swung open. Let's dive into a story where a fallen noble finally catches a break. Arthur stands outside with his sister, 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓, who is beaming. She finally has a real room. Lord Stirling himself granted this. He ordered them into the manor house to ensure they commanded the respect they deserve from the rest of the household staff. 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓 simply cannot hide her pure joy. But she spots something, a fresh cut on Arthur's hand. He brushes it off, claiming it was just a minor scrape from his last training session. She worries for a moment, but they soon get back to playing. Seeing her smile makes the pain worth it for him. 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓 would be safe now, but Arthur has to stay sharp. In 5 years, a massive cataclysm is coming that will tear this entire kingdom apart. His sister will be in the crosshairs again. He needs answers on who is behind the coming dark prophecy. To save her, he must become the heir. Meanwhile, Julian's loyal knight heads to his chambers with news. The knight waits for a word, but Julian is lost in his art, obsessed with his latest painting. The report is grim. The half-blood brother is being sent to St. Valerius Academy. They want to move in and end him right now. Julian doesn't even look up. He finally sets his brush down, stating that his little brother is far too weak to be a threat yet. He actually wants the boy to grow. See, Julian has a very twisted way of having fun. Stick with me, because this guy is a monster. He loves letting things flourish just so he can crush them at their absolute peak. It is a dangerous game to play, even with the Lord's orders. Leaving a talented rival alive is a massive gamble for their house. Arthur already has legendary relics and took down a rank be Holy Knight. He is dangerous. They need to strike now, before he grows too strong. Back at the grounds, Arthur is training hard. He needs to master his unique skills before the academy gates open for the term. That means hunting beasts. As he polishes his blade, he catches a reflection. Julian's personal servant is creeping up behind him with a fake smile. He has to stay on his guard. The man approaches with formal bows. It is weird. You wouldn't expect this kind of politeness from someone who clearly hates your guts. Arthur asks what he wants. Surprisingly, the man apologizes for their little run-in the other day. He says it was wrong to draw steel against a true son of the Duke. Arthur wonders if maybe this guy isn't all bad. He tells him to forget the past, and the servant bows low, thanking him for his noble mercy. But he claimed he had another important matter to discuss with him. While Arthur holds his sword, the servant asks if he'd join a monster hunt. It is a strange request for a servant to make to a lord. He claims Lord Julian and the other knights are busy elsewhere. He's impressed by Arthur's skill and wants to help him level up. This smells like a trap. Arthur knows he can't say no to a chance for growth, but he has to watch his back. Now watch this. Arthur accepts the invite while the servant smirks, already planning how to murder him in the dark woods. So where exactly are we going? To a wasteland called Raven's Crag. Arthur knows that name very well. It's the perfect spot to boost his power. He's looking for ambrosia, a legendary nectar that can permanently skyrocket a mage's mana capacity. The carriage rolls out, heading toward the dangerous hunting grounds. Arthur is ready for blood. If he can secure that ambrosia, his power level will go through the roof. But finding it is nearly impossible. It only hides in secret dungeons, and luckily for him, he remembers exactly where one is going to appear. It'll open near the town of 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓. Night falls, and the group decides to stop at a local inn. The servant lays out the plan. They are hunting dangerous sea serpents. A whole pack of them is nesting nearby. They are rank C threats. They'll strike at first light. Arthur agrees and heads to his room to prepare for the long night ahead. As he walks away, eyes follow him. The servant thinks the boy is just a naive fool. He plans to make it look like a tragic accident. No matter how much talent Arthur has, a rank C kid is easy prey. Inside the room, Arthur assumes his spirit companion is already asleep. He summons his wind shield by the window. By focusing his magic, he uses the artifact in a way no one would ever expect. It becomes a floating platform. He glides toward the dark forest where the dungeon is hidden. He found this place in a past life. No one else knows it exists. Finally, he hits the dirt. The artifact fades. Arthur stands before the hidden entrance. Trust me, things are about to get wild. Stick with me. You and I are about to see how 𝒂𝒔𝒏 finds a hidden gateway to hell. These secret dungeons are all about the color. Blue means tier A, a green gate is tier B. And if you manage to clear those, you get some serious loot. He is hunting for Elixir of Grace to power up fast. It is a huge boost. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 is ready and stepping through the gate now. He needs to take down the dungeon boss first. In his past life, he was only tier D when he faced this. Sir Gareth warned him it was far too early, but 𝒂𝒔𝒏 refuses to run from his fear now. He reaches out, touching the cold energy of the gate. He needs to gain strength, and he needs it as fast as possible. Inside the dungeon, the first monster is already waiting. But honestly, it does not seem like it is going to be a real challenge. He watches the Phantom Knight's every move. It lunges forward with precision, ready to tear him apart with swift, deadly strikes. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 keeps his guard up, blocking every blow until he finally spots a tiny opening in the monster's defense. He slams his blade into the knight's side. But damn, that hit was not enough to actually take the creature down. The impact actually sends him flying back. Time for a change. He pulls out a massive, heavy war hammer to even the odds. He swings with everything he has, landing another blow. But the knight still stands perfectly still, completely unharmed. Steel alone won't break that plate. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 needs a new plan. He draws his sword and lets his magic blaze bright. He's switching to magic attacks now. The strikes spark against the metal, but still, they fail to cause any real damage. All right, pay attention here, because being tier C against a monster like this is a total nightmare. The Phantom Knight is starting to put on the pressure. He's at a major disadvantage. He needs to think of a new strategy, and he needs it right now. Every shield has a crack somewhere. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 stares at the monster, trying to find the one weak point he missed. A mana-infused bullet should do the trick. Now he's loading his fire spitter with pure flame. He starts charging his shot while the knight charges at him. Only 2 seconds left. It is going to be close. The monster is getting closer and closer, until it is finally in range to tear him apart. Finally, at point-blank range, the weapon is ready. He fires, and the blast tears right through the enchanted armor. The force is enough to shatter the metal. The knight collapses to the floor, finally defeated by the boy's cleverness. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 hits the ground too, exhausted by the recoil. He breathes a sigh of relief. Magic was the key all along. The attack just had to be strong enough. Without that divine weapon, he would have been in serious trouble. If the minions are this tough, the boss must be a nightmare. Typical hidden dungeon stuff. Still, the rare items are worth the risk. He finds a potion that can fully restore his stamina and mana. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 chugs it down instantly. He's going to need every bit of strength to keep moving. He pushes forward, crushing every single creature in his path until he reaches the end. Behind those massive doors lies the ultimate predator. Will it be a demon or some giant serpent? 𝒂𝒔𝒏 is about to find out exactly what is waiting for him. Now watch closely, because we are entering the main hall and it looks like an arena. Then, a massive shadow appears. His body begins to shake. His mouth goes completely dry from the overwhelming pressure. The aura is suffocating. This creature is truly dangerous. Its eyes glow with a terrifying, intensely bright scarlet light. The boss knight slowly walks toward him. It is time. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 grips his weapon, preparing for the fight of his life. He has to stay sharp. The phantom boss inspects its blade before moving its weapon with terrifying speed. An attack is coming. 𝒂𝒔𝒏 has to react in the blink of an eye, or this fight ends sooner than expected. The destruction that follows is absolutely mind-blowing. 𝒂𝒏 manages to gain some distance, but he's barely dodging those crushing strikes. One hit, and it is fatal. The monster turns on him again, forcing a desperate leap. This is his chance. He summons his sword for a counterattack. He finds a gap and strikes the boss right in the back. But damn, that armor is 10 times thicker than he ever expected. Breaking through this steel is going to be nearly impossible for him. No time to think, only time to dodge. He goes back to the strategy that worked before his fire spitter. This is his best shot, but this time he is going to charge the blast for much longer. 5 long seconds. He just needs a bit more time for the weapon to reach full capacity. The second it is ready, he fires at the Phantom Knight. He's praying this is enough to win. The blast hits the boss dead on. But trust me, you and I are not going to believe what happens next. All right, you and I are watching Bell face a nightmare. He spots a mark on the Phantom Knight, realizing its magic resistance is insane. Once again, he is cornered. Lucky for him, his speed lets him stay in the game. Realizing he needs more than just footwork, he brings his shield up to stay alive. With the shield, he blocks a heavy swing. But man, that destructive force is just on another level. His hands are shaking as he realizes the pattern is shifting. The Phantom Knight is changing how it hunts him. Suddenly, the attack drops from the sky. As the knight prepares a killing blow, Bell has to react in a heartbeat. The Black Knight's heavy sword slams down, completely shattering the arena floor beneath them. Lost in the rising dust, the beast loses its target. Bell reappears, desperately trying to put some distance between them. He lacks the mana to break that heavy plate armor. Then he sees it, a faint glow forming inside the thick dust cloud. His gut tells him things are about to get ugly. The creature hurls its massive sword right at him. He raises his shield just in time. The blade bounces off into the distance, but Bell knows the assault is far from over. That throw was just a distraction. The real threat is coming from his blind spot. He has 0 options left. The impact sends him reeling in pure agony. He hits the ground hard, but the monster is still hungry for his life. It tries to stomp him out for good. Even in his weakened state, Bell barely rolls away. He only gets back up because he chugged an elixir earlier. Otherwise, it would be game over. Now he is truly empty-handed, and to make matters worse, the creature has its sword back. Faced with impossible odds, he decides to gamble everything. That shield, it is the heaviest thing he has left. A wild plan forms in his head. What if he throws it using the power of wind magic? Suddenly, that defensive shield becomes a weapon. It is now the most powerful projectile in his entire arsenal. But his plan fails. The Phantom Knight dodges with ease, something Bell never expected. Now he is standing there completely unarmed. Nothing stands between him and his death. Now watch closely. Bell is cornered with 0 defense left. He needs that shield to change course midair if he wants to survive this. Against all odds, the shield curves and hits the beast, giving Bell just enough time to dodge. Seeing his opening, Bell charges forward. It is time to switch tactics entirely. He swings his hammer with everything he has left. The knight cannot dodge this time, and the impact is absolutely devastating. The creature finally collapses, defeated. Bell stands over it, gasping for every breath. That shield trick was a massive gamble, but it worked. Now he just needs to finish what is inside that armor. But he waited too long. The knight is already dragging itself back up. This fight is far from finished. Suddenly, the armor plates start falling away, revealing a form Bell cannot even comprehend. The monster reaches for a hidden latch on the hilt of its broken sword. It pulls out a secondary weapon that looks like a locking mechanism. The main sword was just a sheath. You and I both know this is bad. Bell never expected a phase 2, and now he is facing a whole new enemy. The creature is moving at insane speeds now. Bell cannot keep up and gets slammed violently against the wall. Agony surges through his entire body. When he hits the floor, he barely has the strength to move a finger. The beast keeps closing in. Bell is fading fast, and this dungeon boss is ready to end his journey. Despite the pain, he tries to stand. He knows that if he gives up now, he is dead. He can barely even lift his head to see. A lethal slash comes for him, but he catches it. He is using the gauntlet. The monster's luck just ran out. The creature is stunned. This kid was supposed to be done. Meanwhile, Bell summons his own sword to the fight. For the first time today, he is the one pushing back. The real fight starts now as they trade a barrage of blows. Both are moving like lightning, turning the entire arena into a chaotic battlefield. Without the armor, the monster is way faster. But even then, it is no match for the raw power of Bel's gauntlet. He is ready to end this right here. Suddenly, the marks on the monster's body change their color. They glow a blood red. Bel's sword swings, but it passes right through a mirage. He cut through nothing. Now he has to scramble to block an attack he can barely even see. So what do you and I think? Can Bel survive this speed? The pressure is back on. All right, stick with me. You and I are about to see Alistair push his soul to the absolute breaking point just to survive this fight. That intoxicating rush of strength felt like pure, unfiltered fire. A horrific shadow loomed in his mind. The gauntlet was cursed. To claim this power, he had to trade away his immortal soul. Alistair is about to make a deal with the devil, as a dark aura swallows his sanity whole. The raw power was overwhelming, erasing his sense of self. The entity hissed that only the strong deserve to live in this world. Every ounce of his past suffering came from being weak. That was why they always crushed him. His weakness had cost him his life before. He was sick and tired of being the prey in this kingdom. It was time to take what he wanted by force. Slowly, he let the darkness claw at his mind. The beast saw an opening to strike, but Alistair had already evolved his mana into something truly terrifying. Now watch closely. This shockwave from their clashing blades is about to level the entire dungeon floor. A single instinct remained within him, a relentless, soul-shattering hunger for absolute destruction. Victory wasn't enough. He wanted to annihilate everything, and this monster was just the first obstacle. He would crush anything in his path, but even as madness took hold, the memory of his sister Bel sparked a final flicker of awareness. Bel was still desperately fighting the powerful demon. He couldn't pay the soul price yet, not with his beloved sister waiting. Alistair didn't fight to kill, he fought to keep her safe. The true reason he sought this legendary strength was to keep his sister safe from harm. He forced himself back into control. It was time for that beast to hand over its stolen power right now. The Aegis power was truly legendary. He easily shoved the dungeon boss back as the entity continued its whispers. It offered him godhood in exchange for his soul, but despite the chaos in his head, Alistair refused to break. He hesitated for a heartbeat before lunging forward. The creature roared and charged at him with primal fury. Both unleashed their ultimate strikes, vanishing into a blur of high-speed, lethal combat. The beast tried a surprise magic attack, but Alistair's speed was simply on another level. With one clean stroke, he disarmed the monster, literally tearing one of its limbs from its body. The creature was crippled and defenseless. Alistair found his opening and sliced the nightmare in two with a single blow. You feel that too, right? Against all odds, Bel is the one standing victorious here. With power still humming through his veins, he watched the lifeless monster dissolve into nothing but ash. The trial was over. Now he just had to remove that cursed gauntlet of shadows. That enemy was far too powerful, nearly costing him his soul. Alistair had to avoid using that dark gauntlet ever again if possible. Suddenly, a small vial appeared. It was the legendary ambrosia he had been hunting for. By drinking the contents of this vial, he will finally gain the mana of a level B knight, unlocking his divine armor for the fight. He had never seen real ambrosia before. Honestly, a small part of him was actually terrified. But a better future required a leap of faith. He drank it. At first, nothing happened. Then his mana exploded. It was incredible. He had jumped to level B in a single instant. But then came the agony. His chest burned like white-hot iron, and his body felt like it was being melted from the inside out. The sheath on his hip began to glow with blinding light. Everything went black. He collapsed, unconscious, lying in the center of a strange, glowing magic circle. He woke up with a jolt. This wasn't the dungeon. It felt like a completely different dimension. A man greeted him. Alistair was finally awake. It was his mentor, whom he hadn't seen in years. Even with the hood hiding his face, Alistair knew. There was no mistaking his master's presence. Other powerful warriors stood there too. A girl with a massive hammer, a masked gauntlet bearer, and a knight in heavy, gleaming steel armor. Surprisingly, they all welcomed him with open arms into their fold. He had never heard of such a place before. This was the legendary realm of souls. Seeing his pupil again brought the man to tears, and Alistair's master was none other than the great Sir Reginald, the man who gave him Avalon, the original wielder of the legendary 𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒓 shield. So what do you and I take from this? Is this a hero's reunion or just a time traveler's worst nightmare? We'll find out. All right, you and I are about to see what happens when a fallen knight gets a second chance at life. Stunned, Arthur questioned what this place was, a hidden realm existing deep within the legendary blade, Avalon. This was the sanctum where all divine relics and the spirits of their past masters were kept. Arthur was confused and asked where his master's physical body lay. Alistair simply shrugged, saying it was likely rotting in some distant mountain range. Avalon was no ordinary weapon. It was a divine relic that bound itself to the souls of its wielders across time. Even if a knight lost the blade, their consciousness stayed tethered to their physical form. Arthur suspected that his trip back to the past was Avalon's doing, but his master wasn't so sure. As far as Alistair knew, the holy weapon didn't possess that kind of godlike power. Arthur never expected his own master to be so clueless, but the old knight simply smiled and praised him for doing an incredible job keeping his sister Alara safe. He gave him his blessing. Flustered by the praise, Arthur asked why they were meeting here now. Alistair took a breath, ready to explain the truth. Suddenly, another spirit stepped forward, complaining that the two were talking far too long and he wanted a turn. This was Silas of the Flame, but Alistair barked at him to wait his turn with his young disciple. Silas joked that the old man should relax. It wasn't like he was a stiff stone golem. Arthur watched the banter, completely lost, until Silas formally introduced himself to the sixth successor of Avalon. Silas claimed it was an honor to meet him, but when Arthur reached out to shake his hand, he realized the mischievous spirit was just pulling another prank. The man's playful nature was something Arthur just couldn't wrap his head around. Seeing the confusion, Silas laughed, calling the sixth successor incredibly naive for falling for such a trick. Lady Catherine joined in, noting that the rookie was clearly still getting used to the afterlife. Silas insisted it was just a joke and turned to Hugo for backup, but the boy was painfully shy. As the fourth successor, Hugo begged them not to look at him while Catherine rolled her eyes at Silas, teasing. Silas told her to stop scowling or she'd get wrinkles, a comment that definitely didn't sit well with the lady. Alistair tried to settle the argument, but Catherine couldn't stand Marcus' attitude, especially when he started up with his annoying comedian antics again. It was bizarre for Arthur to see his legendary master in such a casual, almost goofy setting. Clearly, these ancestors were incredibly powerful, and Arthur had many questions about who they really were. These were the legendary heroes who once saved the kingdom, but a stern swordsman told everyone to get down to business. Now watch closely, because Grandmaster Alaric, the very first successor, is about to reveal the real reason for this meeting. Arthur listened intently as Alaric explained that the sixth successor needed to master the true powers of the divine relic. This shocked him. When fully awakened, these holy weapons released a crushing amount of mana. Unlocking that power now would literally tear his young body apart, which explained the agonizing pain he felt. Alaric warned him to wait until his body matured, but Arthur refused, believing he couldn't afford to halt his progress for even a single day. He needed this power to protect his sister from harm. You and I both know Arthur isn't backing down, so Alaric decides to test him by launching a crushing strike that's almost too fast for the eye to follow. Arthur scrambled to defend himself, only to realize that Alaric had already vanished and reappeared right behind his back. Arthur was struck by the blunt side of the blade, as Alaric hoped he'd realize his own weakness, but he never expected the boy to actually block the attack. Seeing this, the Grandmaster had to reconsider everything. Arthur's recent battles had pushed him further than expected. Maybe he was ready to master the blade after all. The ancestors watched in silence as Arthur asked if he had finally earned their respect and approval. Alaric nodded. If he focused on just one single ability, his body might actually survive the strain. Alaric granted Arthur permission to unlock his rank B sword techniques now, with the promise that those legendary rank of powers would follow once he truly proved his worth. Arthur didn't hesitate, vowing to unlock those powers this very second. Alaric admired the boy's grit while Marcus, the comedian, wished the sixth successor the best of luck. Even shy, Hugo hoped Arthur would succeed in protecting his sister from the dangers of the kingdom. The heroes promised to watch him from the shadows as Arthur's soul finally left the void and returned to his body in the dark dungeon. And that's where we leave it. His pain is gone, replaced by a strange sensation. All right, you and I are about to witness exactly what happens when a legendary hero finally gets backed into a very dangerous corner. To reach the monster-infested waters, they had to set sail. Now, they are right in the dead middle of that long journey. The young man warned that the Leviathans would strike soon. It is time to prepare for a bloodbath on the high seas. What he doesn't know is that everyone on board is a traitor. Even the local barber joined in on this dark conspiracy. Alaric started finding this whole task a bit strange. Why send a B-rank knight to clear out simple sea pests like these? And why would he even need backup? It is obvious that something sinister is being planned behind his back. Our hero knows a surprise attack would be fatal. He cannot take his eyes off of them for even a single second. They were told the destination was close. Yet, the ocean remained eerily still and calm as they sailed further into the mist. He watched Roderick draw a knife and slice his own arm. He claimed he needed his own blood to bait the beasts. Using his own blood as a lure, that would be more than enough to send those creatures into a total feeding frenzy. Just like he predicted, it didn't take long for the first sea monster to break the surface and attack the ship. Then several more appeared all at once. There were way more of them than they ever expected to see in these waters. Since they are sea creatures, Alaric suggested they split up, but Roderick wouldn't let him leave his side for a moment. Suspicious, Alaric demanded to know his true motives. Finally, the villain declared that the boy would not be leaving there alive. The fight started instantly, but Alaric was already trapped with a heavy whip wrapped tightly around his leg. He realized he was at a massive disadvantage. The man holding the whip was actually the ship's own mysterious ferryman. The assassin pulled back his hood to reveal his face. He kept a firm and deadly grip on that enchanted whip. Now pay attention here. This betrayal by Sir Gareth goes way deeper than we ever thought possible. With a burst of strength, he hoisted Alaric up and froze his legs solid. This is not going to be pleasant. Alaric was hurled into the sea. Sir Gareth wasn't done, using his power to make the ice block even larger. That way, it would be nearly impossible for the boy to ever climb his way back onto the boat. Defying the laws of physics, the ice began to sink. They expect the monsters to finish him off in the depths. They think the boy is dead, leaving the monsters to ensure no escape. He needs to find some air right now. To reach the surface, he tried using his shield. It generates its own wind, so it might just make the impossible happen. But the ice kept sinking deeper. He started using magic just to produce a tiny bit of oxygen to survive. Using the shield's interior, he managed to catch his breath. He never expected those two to join forces to betray him. He was watching Roderick, but he didn't realize there was a second killer waiting in the shadows the whole time. The surface is frozen shut, and that's not his only problem. The water is crawling with creatures that pose a deadly threat. His priority is freeing his leg. With the power of the shield, he should be able to shatter all that thick ice. He finally broke free, but his ankle was badly injured. That enchanted whip really did a lot of damage to his skin. The monsters smelled the blood in the water. Without wasting another second, he summoned his legendary sword to the deep. He doesn't have the numbers, but this experience is the perfect opportunity for him to get some real combat training. I know what you're thinking. One kid versus an army. Well, trust me, watch what happens next. He locked onto his first target. The sword glowed intensely, firing a massive blast of pure energy straight at the beast. Dozens of swords of light suddenly appeared in the water, wiping out every hostile creature in sight within seconds. It has been ages since he used the Starblade formation. Now, it is finally time for him to enjoy the hunt. A swarm of creatures headed his way, but the blades of light intercepted their targets with absolutely deadly precision. They went straight for the kill. This is the true ability of the legendary Caliburn blade he now carries. It summons luminous swords that fly and cut just like the original. Soon, all those creatures will be completely annihilated. On the surface, things aren't easy either. They are using the frozen water as a floor to destroy the rest of them. 5 minutes have passed since the attack. They are both confident the boy has already departed for the land of the dead. Gareth is impressed with Roderick's tactical mind. That plan to trap him under the ice was actually quite brilliant. Besides, he can kill these monsters with ease. Roderick has confirmed that he is on a completely different level of power. It is lucky the boy stayed on his side, or he would have ended up just like one of those monsters. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, those traitors are in for one hell of a massive surprise. All right, stick with me as we dive into a battle, starting with a sudden ambush from beneath the ice. Sir Raynor was impressed. Something was lurking underwater. A massive hole opened in the frozen lake. This was bad news, because a gargantuan leviathan just surfaced, ready to tear them apart. A thick, slimy tentacle shot out of the freezing water. Now watch closely. This rank B beast usually takes an entire squad of elite paladins to bring down. He has to move fast. One slip up and he loses his life. But that is not all, because this aquatic monster has plenty of deadly tricks left. It fires a barrage of projectiles, but the skilled knight manages to evade every single shot. Now those reaching tentacles are closing in. The young man knows that getting caught means an instant, watery grave for him. He needs to end this fight now, if he wants to survive the day. His holy weapon lets him channel mana, turning his blade into a conduit of pure energy. Because the mechanism is so simple, the discharge is devastatingly powerful. He is certain he can end this beast with just one strike. But this creature is smarter than it looks. The knight finally unleashes his ultimate attack, striking the monster with everything he has got. However, the results were shocking. The monster actually used another creature's carcass as a shield to block the blow. That just made his situation a whole lot more desperate. Now that the enemy is purely enraged, his life is on the line. He has to retreat back to the ship. The ice is shattered. There is no solid ground left for him to stand on near the beast. And it gets worse. Other monsters are swarming the boat now, determined to wipe out every human on board. He is so busy fighting them off that he does not see the tentacle coming until it smashes him right in the face. His weapons were not built for a crowd, and he has completely lost any home field advantage in this freezing environment. Leaving the boat is not an option. He watches as the monsters continue to gather outside. I know what you are thinking. He is a goner, right? Well, look who just crawled back from the icy depths of the lake. Everyone thought the boy was dead, but then Arthur suddenly appeared. He is literally flying on his shield, smashing through monsters. Arthur realizes the traitor Raynor is in a tight spot. Raynor cannot believe the kid survived that, but even after the betrayal, Arthur is still willing to help. But Raynor thinks the boy is useless here. That Leviathan is a rank B monster. He thinks the kid is outclassed, but our hero has a surprise. As more tentacles swarm him, Arthur stays perfectly calm and ready. Using the powers of Caliburn, he intercepts every single strike with his light blades. Raynor is stunned. He cannot believe the boy has already mastered the weapon's secret technique. These skills are incredibly hard to learn. Arthur shouts that he is turning this monster into fish food. The monster fires high-pressure water blasts, but the boy does not even flinch as the attacks fly by. If those hits land, the boat is history. Arthur prepares to show this monster his true power. He shifts the formation of his light blades, merging them all back into the main steel. The blades fuse, forming a massive energy sword capable of firing a concentrated beam. The creature's attack slams into the boy's counter, but his will to win is simply stronger. His beam pierces the monster's hide, and he flies right through, slicing the beast wide open. Finally, the terror of the lake is finished. The beast was split in half by that single attack. Nobody can believe that a mere boy just pulled off such an impossible feat. Back on the ship, he tells Sir Spencer he is next. It is time to pay for his crimes. This kid is going to be a major problem for Lord Julian, or so his servant thought. Even after that display, he is determined to kill the boy. He yells that a peasant will never defeat a rank B paladin. As he gets closer, Arthur finds it hilarious that the paladin still thinks he can win. He used Sir Spencer for a sneak attack and is sure the boy is terrified. The two knights glare before charging in. Their blades finally clash with a bang. At first, the boy holds his own, until Raynor uses his massive physical strength to shove the kid backward with sheer force, showing who is truly in charge. It is clear that one of them has the upper hand in power. Trust me, you and I just witnessed the start of a legendary showdown with Caliburn. All right, let's see if this young knight can survive one of the deadliest radiant blades we've ever seen. A single blade shouldn't be too hard to parry. At least, that's what the knight thought. But it was a clever trap by the boy to catch him off guard. Razor uses his divine armament to completely shatter that radiant blade. Slowly, the shimmering image starts to fade. He is convinced the boy will not even touch him. Honestly, the duel looks pretty even for now. Taking down a B-rank paladin is no joke. Using those high-tier abilities is draining the boy's mana fast. Now he is down to his last sword. The veteran knight knows the kid cannot keep this up much longer. Advancing ruthlessly, he wants to end this right now. His first swing misses, but the second strike of the combo lands a direct hit. That young, undeveloped body cannot take a hit like that. The gap in raw physical strength is massive. He could drag this out for ages, but he is terrified of being swallowed by the rising shadows. Close combat is too risky, so he fires several mana shots, but the boy dodges every single one. That was the opening the kid needed. The knight sees the strategy, but it lacks the agility to be effective. But watch closely, he didn't account for the unexpected to happen. Using the recoil from the shots, the boy lunges forward even faster. He almost takes his head off, but only makes him angrier. Seeing his opponent's rage boil over, the boy realizes his plan is working perfectly. Because that last radiant blade, it was a decoy. A real one just pierced the knight's back. He never saw it coming. With a wound of that magnitude, there is no way he can continue this fight. Realizing he completely misread the boy's strategy, and seeing his opponent is done, he walks up to him with total calm. He tells him it is over, and suggests he just give up before things get worse. But the concept of giving up does not exist for him. He truly believes the boy is a threat to his master, Lord Jin. For the sake of his lord, he swears he must win this battle. The boy asks why he is so loyal, and we get a look at the knight's past. Years ago, he was broken and dying on the battlefield. There was no strength left in his body to keep walking. That is when a man approached his mangled body, standing over him like a shadow. He figured this must be the man coming to execute him for his crimes as a mercenary. With what little strength remained, he looked up. Instead, the young noble opens a flask and pours a healing elixir over his wounds. He told him today was his lucky day because from that moment on, he'd be serving a brand new master. That is why he is so loyal. Lord Jin gave him a life, and now he will do anything to repay that kindness. No matter what happens, he crushes the radiant blade with his bare hands and throws the broken scraps to the ground. He sees that his enemy has already accepted his fate. He thought he was a bandit, but respects his knightly honor. Now they will fight with full power. The young man is still furious and ready for the final clash. But Bell has seen that move once before. It is powerful, but takes time to charge, so he will strike first. The boy goes on the offensive immediately. He lunges in, but a sudden move catches him off guard. A brutal knee to the gut. He fell for a feint, and now he is on the verge of losing. Shaking it off, he warns the knight that he still has one last trick up his sleeve. A tiny shard of the broken sword was still active, slashing across the knight's back and finishing him. The paladin thought he had destroyed every blade. He was dead wrong about that. The boy only made it look like they were gone. That was the master plan all along. It is like the kid has years of battle experience hidden inside him. It is honestly terrifying. If he hadn't used that hidden ace, he surely would have lost. But he actually managed to defeat a B-rank paladin. He is getting stronger exactly as planned. Now, the ship finally reaches the docks of the capital city. Sarah is searching everywhere for her brother, but he is nowhere to be found near the castle. She keeps looking, hoping he is just late, but the worry is starting to set in as the sun sets. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see what happens next. She spotted the heavy oak doors standing ajar. It was the great library. All right, stick with me here, because Sarah's search for her brother is about to take a dark and terrifying turn. Julian suddenly blocked her path, catching the girl completely off guard. Even though they shared the same blood, his presence felt like a threat. Fear gripped her chest, yet noble etiquette demanded she offer a greeting. As she tried to speak, her voice failed her. Those menacing eyes were more than enough to paralyze any normal girl with pure terror. Brushing past her, Julian whispered that she was completely worthless. Shaking, Sarah stumbled backward until she slammed into a solid chest, looking up in shock. It was her elder brother, Benedict. He glared at Julian, demanding to know what he wanted with Sarah. Julian remained silent, his gaze cold. Sarah finally breathed a sigh of relief as she reunited with her brother, overjoyed to see him return safely. Even so, he had been wounded in battle once again. He explained that he'd crossed paths with a powerful rank B holy knight named Raynor. Even facing that news, Julian didn't flinch, total indifference. Benedict warned him that the trap had failed completely. Julian just shrugged, calling them all nothing more than tiny pebbles scattered on his path to power. Now watch this. Even his own sister isn't safe from his cruelty. Julian turned to leave, claiming he had no more time to waste on mere pebbles. But our protagonist still had one final thing to say. He warned his brother that he would be the one to succeed the Duke, because Julian was clearly incapable of protecting the family honor. Julian spun around the second he heard those words. He glared at the boy with a murderous intent that made the very air feel heavy. The room was swallowed by his hostile aura, a presence that was truly terrifying. But Benedict didn't flinch, refusing to let his brother see any hesitation. A twisted grin touched Julian's lips. Then, he let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed through the room. Maybe watching mere pebbles struggle could be entertaining after all. Leaving the library, he warned that his brother could try to finish him off whenever he felt brave enough. Sarah was trembling after that exchange, but Benedict quickly stepped in to comfort her. That pressure had been suffocating. Julian was truly a monster unlike anyone they had seen. When it came to raw power, the gap between them was a massive canyon. To ever hope of defeating him, Benedict would have to reach a whole new level before graduation. Now, let's skip ahead a few days after that encounter. His bags were packed for the journey. The Duke stood waiting, pleased to see his son fully prepared for the trials that lay ahead of him. He thanked his father. Royal Academy rules are strict. Every noble student must be accompanied by a personal bodyguard at all times. The Duke assigned him a rank B paladin. The knight bowed, swearing his sword to the young master's service. Seeing an opening, Benedict hesitated, then asked for a special favor. The Duke nodded, granting him the floor. Suddenly, Sarah burst into the room with her own luggage in hand. She apologized for the delay, rushing over to stand firmly by her brother's side. Now, you and I both know the Duke isn't going to make this easy. The Duke demanded to know his son's motivation. Benedict refused to leave his sister behind, but his father wasn't about to let emotion cloud his judgment. The academy was for warriors and guardians. not for children's games or siblings to play house. Sarah begged for a chance, but her father's gaze hardened. He warned her never to ask again. So Benedict made a bold move. He officially named her his bodyguard. With her by his side, he swore he could even take down a rank a holy night. The Duke paused, then let out a rare chuckle. Intrigued by the boy's fire, he granted the request. Their carriage rolled out toward the capital. Sarah watched the changing landscapes with wide, wondering eyes. They finally reached the gates. The architecture was breathtaking. Sarah beamed, so proud of how far Benedict had come. This school was for nobles only. While Benedict was in class, he asked his sister to focus on her studies within their room. They tried to settle in, but found several students locked in a fierce duel. Just a sparring match between students, a perfect chance to gauge the competition. Sarah watched, totally mesmerized. They all seemed formidable to the common eye, but Benedict could clearly see that they were still stuck at rank D. One fighter stood out from the rest, immediately catching Benedict's sharp eye. But even he was only rank C, hardly a threat to our hero's ambitions. Only two remained. One boy grinned, certain that today was the day he'd finally claim the top spot. He charged at his opponent with everything he had, desperate for a win. But the other student didn't move an inch, letting the blade come dangerously close. Even Sarah gasped in fear for him. The counterattack was a blinding blur. One strike was all it took. No divine weapon was used, just raw skill that left the courtyard in absolute silence. And trust me, you and I can see this guy might be Benedict's toughest challenge yet. Stick with me. You are about to see why the House of Windsor is feared by everyone. Seeing their representative left Arthur on edge. After all, they were his family's ancient, historical archenemies. They were mortal foes to him and his sisters. Now, the Academy's grand opening was finally beginning. The instructors were busy congratulating the brand new first-year recruits admitted to these prestigious halls. The student council president presided over the ceremony, hoping this batch of freshmen wouldn't be total weaklings. Sir Alaric was a legendary third-year student whose ancestors were all renowned and powerful high-ranking paladins. In his past life, they never met, but at 18, Alaric had already reached master rank, making Arthur wonder if he caused that incident. People whispered that the boy was terrifying, already ranking as a B-tier combatant at his young age. It turned out several other council members were hovering at that same elite level of martial power. The student council was formed by those who ranked in the top 4 during the martial arts event, and the title of president went to the champion. Watch closely, he is powerful. Our hero wasn't sure if this man was his future tormentor, but to prevent any attacks, he had to show his enemies just how powerful he was. At this school, you do not vote for the council, you fight for it. He planned to enter the trials himself, just so he could eventually crush Sir Alaric in a duel. Inside the classroom, he waited for the professor. Suddenly, a boy approached and asked if anyone was sitting there. Arthur told the stranger the spot was free, and that he was welcome to sit down. The boy introduced himself as Leo Fletcher, hoping for a peaceful few years, but something caught Arthur's attention. That surname rang a bell for Arthur. Seeing his shock, Leo looked back with a very curious expression. He played it cool, but he was shocked. Years from now, this boy would purge corrupt nobles for revenge, becoming the legendary Knight of Retribution. Though he was just a kid now, Leo asked for our hero's name to be polite. He was about to answer, remembering his father's advice to hide his lineage, because having a famous surname would stop him from truly testing his own limits at this academy. To truly grow, he had to survive on his own merits alone. He chose the fake name Luke Blade, staying undercover until he finally managed to take down Sir Alaric. Hearing that name, Leo assumed he was a fellow commoner. Their uniform patches showed exactly which class they belonged to. Commoners wore circles, while nobles used stars. Arthur confirmed his fake status, while Leo explained his own common background. The school was packed with noble heirs, leaving the common students as a minority. Knowing they shared the same rank, Leo hoped they could get along well. Befriending a future legendary knight was a smart move. In his past life, Arthur was always alone, so this felt pleasant. Suddenly, a tall boy approached them. It seemed he already knew exactly who Leo was. "You saw that, right? Lord Reginald did not come here to be friendly, but specifically to mock his old childhood acquaintance from back home." This was the son of a count and a D-tier fighter, demanding to know why a commoner was there. Leo explained he passed the entrance exam fairly, but Reginald's presence made him visibly shake with discomfort. Getting close, he hissed that Avalon Academy was no place for peasants, and he should leave immediately. Leo felt terrified as Reginald barked that commoners must obey their masters, claiming he could ruin a peasant with just a few words. Arthur intervened, telling him that was enough. Leo started panicking, terrified that his new friend would be targeted by the Lord. Reginald turned his gaze to Arthur, disgusted to find yet another commoner standing in his way with total disdain. Arthur told him to get lost regardless of rank. Reginald looked like he might back off, but then made a sudden move toward the boy. He slammed a heavy kick into Leo's side. Arthur's eyes narrowed while the noble laughed at his new friend. Arthur called him a disgrace, who did not deserve the title of a holy knight. A true noble should protect the weak, but Reginald claimed commoners only existed to be exploited by the elite. Arthur warned him that his pride was a trap. Kingdoms can fall just as easily as peasants. Reginald looked ready to use magic, asking Arthur if he wanted to fight while summoning a divine weapon to his hands. "Trust me, you and I need to watch as Arthur finally prepares to summon his own weapon." Lord Cedric was quite intrigued by that. "Stick with me. We are watching a noble despise a commoner who is about to teach him a very painful lesson." He assumed Arthur was just a nobody with a useless weapon. Arthur fired back that if he could not even crush a fly, then Cedric must be even less than a common fly. Furious at being mocked by a commoner, Cedric decided it was time to end this little game once and for all. Arthur was ready for him, and now the whole class was leaning in to see the sparks fly between them. Cedric charged forward, completely unaware that in this story, he is nothing more than a side character. Arthur braced for the impact, but suddenly, a mysterious hand reached out and stopped the fight dead in its tracks. The haunting notes of a lyre echoed through the hall, freezing both of them in their tracks instantly. A girl stepped forward, telling them to stop fighting and pay attention since they were all classmates now. Arthur had no idea who this girl was, but she just kept right on playing that strange, beautiful lyre. She introduced herself as Lady Seela of House 𝒂𝒔, a marquis's daughter with far more authority than Cedric ever had. Before things could escalate further, the instructor entered and ordered everyone to take their seats for the lesson. For their first task, she would be evaluating every student's raw combat potential. The goal was simple: use their sacred relics to destroy these training golems and show off the true destructive power hidden within their souls. The first student rushed in, sword high, and delivered a heavy strike right against the target's chest. But the golem was like solid stone. His blade barely left a scratch on its cold surface. The damage healed instantly, a detail Arthur noted as the rest of the class failed one by one. The teacher was not impressed. Most were just rank E, barely able to conjure even a spark of magic. Now pay attention here, it is Leo's turn, but his spear has 0 magic. He is the only rank F present. The boy lunged forward, driving his spear into the golem's frame with everything he had. But then, he was sent flying back. Cedric mocked him for being a magicless failure, but Leo slowly stood up. Determined to show the difference between elite and trash, Cedric's scythe began to glow with a fiery heat. He struck with total confidence, his blade sinking deep into the golem and tearing through its heavy armored structure. The class gasped. Even the instructor was pleased, marking him down as a solid rank D student. Cedric felt like a king, but then it was the blonde girl's turn to finally step up and perform. She began to play her lyre, and the attack was finally set in motion. Sound waves blasted the target, causing massive destruction that far surpassed Cedric's fiery strike from just a few moments ago. These two were in a league of their own. Cedric was suddenly being very polite, respecting her only because she held a much higher rank than him. He only did that to maintain his noble image and make a good impression. But she shut him down immediately. To her, everyone at this academy was an equal, regardless of birth. Titles meant nothing here. As Cedric stewed in his anger, it was finally time for Arthur to be tested. You and I both know Cedric expected a total disaster, since Arthur was only holding a simple sword's sheath. Arthur just smiled and drew his real weapon, the legendary 𝒂𝒓𝒏, for all the world to see. Cedric's jaw dropped. The commoner actually possessed more than one sacred armament. The whole room was stunned, but Cedric quickly noticed the blade lacked any visible magical aura. He waited for Arthur to fail, but our hero just told him to watch very closely. With a blinding flurry of strikes, he completely pulverized the golem until nothing remained but tiny, shattered pieces on the floor. The entire class was frozen in silence. Even the teacher could not believe the power she had just seen. He had shattered the target with pure martial skill. No magic needed, just raw, unmatched talent and speed. Cedric was losing his mind with jealousy, while Leo rushed over to congratulate his incredible new friend. Arthur made it sound easy, telling Leo that he could achieve the same thing with enough practice. He promised Leo that his spear had massive potential if he just refused to ever give up. He truly believed the boy could become the kingdom's most powerful holy knight one day. Leo turned bright red from the praise, just as Lady Seela suddenly appeared between them both. So what do you and I make of this? Everyone is eyeing our hero now, and things are about to get wild. Stick with me, because you and I are about to witness a commoner student wielding a legendary divine relic that no one else can even track. Lord Roger watched in envy as the other students whispered that this newcomer's weapon was far superior to his own. Terrified of the noble's rage, a boy quickly claimed Roger's sword was stronger, but the damage was done. The day's tasks were over. The next lesson was a grim practical test, hunting monsters in the deep forest behind the academy. Everyone had to be ready. As the students buzzed with curiosity about Arthur, Roger summoned his personal bodyguard to appear from the shadows immediately. The knight looked pale and worn, but Roger didn't care. He had brought his familiar for protection during tomorrow's hunt. Sir Garrett asked the young lord if he truly intended to use the creature during a school task. Roger dismissed any concerns, while his knight praised the young master for his supposedly courageous and bold spirit. The petty noble smiled, imagining the terror he would inflict on those peasants while sending his proud rival straight to hell. The class gathered at the forest edge, where monsters ranging from rank 5 to rank 4 had been released. Their objective was simple: slay the beasts. The student with the highest kill count would receive massive bonus points. Now pay attention here, because you and I are about to see Lord Roger's true, malicious nature finally boil over. The hunt began, and a noble girl challenged Arthur, desperate to see who would claim the top spot in the forest. Little did she know that first place was already taken. It was time for Arthur to reveal his overwhelming strength. Liam begged to follow him into the woods. Arthur agreed since the boy lacked confidence, but warned he wouldn't slow down as they sprinted toward the dark trees together. It didn't take long before they stumbled upon several feral creatures. They were no match for Arthur, who carved through them like paper while his classmates were busy engaging other beasts. He had already taken down 15 monsters, and honestly, it barely even felt like a warm-up for him. Liam was stunned by the performance, but there was absolutely no time for idle chatter in a place like this. A monster lunged from behind, but Arthur saved him just in time. The number of creatures was far greater than expected. Poor Liam was forced to fight his own paralyzing fears. While the others made steady progress, Arthur knew he had to put in much more effort to stay ahead of everyone. From the shadows, Roger watched his rivals with pure venom, cursing the arrogance of these common-born upstarts. Now watch closely, because this is where the jealous noble decides to play God and summon something truly horrific from the abyss. Suddenly, Arthur noticed a massive, glowing magic circle erupting from the forest floor. A monstrous being emerged from the light, a lethal salamander capable of incinerating everything with its ancient fire. Its massive jaws and razor-sharp teeth sent a wave of pure terror through the gathered students. Everyone fled in panic, but Arthur stood his ground as the beast prepared to launch a devastating attack on Liam. Once again, Arthur raised his shield, blocking the flames and saving Liam before ordering the boy to run for his life with the others. A rank 2 creature shouldn't be here, but Arthur just grinned. This was going to be a lot of fun. The protagonist unleashed his hidden power, sending swords of pure light flying against the massive creature. The blades pierced its thick scales, leaving Roger shocked that a mere peasant possessed such a unique ability. Furious, Roger ordered his knight to increase the difficulty, and the guard stood ready to obey his dark command. The salamander was trapped by the light blades, and Liam watched in awe as Arthur pressured the powerful beast. It was time to end this. The light blades lunged for the kill, but Sir Garrett intervened, sabotaging the attack just as Arthur sensed the hidden trap. A figure emerged from the trees, mocking Arthur and admitting that his unique light ability was actually quite impressive. Realizing this man controlled the monster, Arthur coldly asked the stranger what he was truly after. The knight declared he wouldn't leave without Arthur's head, as the salamander resumed throwing lethal fireballs at him. The attacks clashed with a roar, and Arthur used a gust of wind from his shield to clear the steam. But the knight was one step ahead, using a water prison to trap each of Arthur's light blades. His powers were sealed tight. Arthur realized he was facing a dangerous rank 2 paladin in a fight to the death. And that is where we leave Arthur, surrounded by fire and steel. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see how he survives. All right, you and I are jumping right into a mess where Alaric has to block one strike while parrying another. With his current magic capacity, this was way out of his league. Liam didn't know what to do. At this rate, his friend was going down. Suddenly, he spotted Roderick lurking in the woods looking suspicious as hell. That was the noble family's summoning staff. He charged toward Roderick, who never expected the boy to find his hiding spot. He demanded to know if that relic was his. He had to stop this madness before Alaric got killed. Roderick didn't hesitate and struck him down, telling the commoner to stay on the ground where he belongs. It was pathetic, being too weak to help anyone. In that moment, Liam remembered his grueling days as a child. He'd been shamed countless times for having no magic, especially by Roderick. But honestly, things were about to change for good. So, he forced himself up, holding on to the words Alaric once told him. Now pay attention, because those words gave him a reason to fight. He wouldn't let his friend die today. Roderick laughed, thinking a worm could never defeat him. To him, commoners were just dirt under his boots. Liam told him to shut his mouth. Nobody gets to decide his worth without his permission. Roderick actually looked nervous. He barked that even with magic, Liam would still lose. Liam just gave him a cold nod. That cursed scythe began to glow. Roderick wanted to end this trash, but Liam radiated nothing but pure confidence. His spear struck out, freezing the flames until they shattered. This was definitely not what the noble had expected. The real coward was this redhead. Roderick lost it, charging like a madman, but Liam's spear was far too strong, effortlessly blocking the heavy strike. Their weapons locked together in a shower of sparks. Roderick couldn't believe his eyes, but Liam knew exactly what he was doing. With one massive surge, he shattered the boy's legendary weapon. Roderick fell to his knees, unable to process the loss. You saw that too, right? Beaten by an F-rank knight. Liam felt no more fear, only pity for this loser. He ordered him to hand over that summoning staff. Roderick asked if he knew who he was messing with. He was from a powerful house, and could ruin Liam's entire family lineage. But the brat still didn't get it. Liam kept his cool, freezing the noble's legs and demanding the staff one last time. With his pride completely crushed, Roderick finally agreed to give up the relic. He begged for his life, promising to never act out again. He was totally broken and utterly humiliated. The staff finally changed hands. Liam warned him to stay far away from them, or things would get much worse. He let his guard down for a second. While Roderick pretended to cower, he reached for his weapon's chain as it started to glow. A dirty sneak attack was coming. Roderick thought he had him, but Liam was way ahead, blocking that pathetic strike. It was honestly embarrassing to watch him try. The summoning staff lay on the dirt, smashed into pieces by the boy. Roderick was left completely speechless. He watched his family heirloom crumble. Slowly, the giant salamander began to fade into mist. This was a total disaster for the knight. The beast's summoner realized something had happened to his master. From a distance, he saw his master was down. He turned his blade toward the other commoner, but he couldn't afford to be distracted right now. The real mastermind behind the attack was finally revealed. He really wanted to take Alaric down. It was a shame things had to end this way. In a fair duel, that knight would never stand a chance. All he could do was curse and fire wildly, missing every single shot. His situation was getting worse by the second. Even as a B-rank knight, he was bottom tier. Alaric slammed the hilt of his sword right into the man's head. The power gap was just too wide. Alaric threatened to turn him over to the Academy Masters as a last resort. Immediately, the knight fell to the ground, begging for mercy. It was so pathetic Alaric was stunned. The man claimed he was just following orders. After all, disobeying a powerful noble was a death sentence for a soldier. But this was just a trick to catch our hero off his guard. He pretended to be thankful for the mercy, planning a betrayal the whole time. But Alaric wasn't stupid. He warned the man he was just playing along before preparing his final strike. He already knew he was being played from the start. Liam checked on his friend, knowing Alaric was safe. "Trust me, you and I just witnessed a true hero moment. Let's see how a simple handshake officially sealed a lifelong friendship between these two." Other students gathered around, thanking them for their help. Defeating a B-rank knight was legendary, but there was more to the story. That knight was a pawn of Lord Roderick. Even the fire salamander was tied to their dark schemes. Roderick was truly a snake. Because of his defeat, Lionel was finally being hailed as a hero by his peers. It seemed that he truly was powerful after all. Lionel thanked them humbly for their praise, acting exactly like the legendary knight he would one day become. Someone had been watching the entire spectacle from the shadows. A blonde noblewoman seemed intrigued, finally understanding the secret of the boy's divine weapon. Roderick's crimes were finally coming to light. She waited at the corridor's end. This mysterious girl had a message for our protagonist. He recognized her as Lady Cecily and asked what she could possibly want with him. Now watch closely. She's about to drop a name that should have been lost to history: Avalon. She knew it was the sacred blade of ancient heroes, and he had no clue how she uncovered such a secret. One look at his face told her she was right. She was the first to ever recognize his true power. Her goal was simple, yet Alastair looked worried as she bowed politely before him. She asked with total grace if she could see the legendary weapon. It caught him completely off guard. She had admired tales of this hero's weapon forever. Since it was harmless, he pulled out the sheath. She was stunned to find it was real. Alastair demanded to know how she even knew it existed. She spoke of a family legend about an ancient hero who carried a sheath for multiple blades. It was possible one of his ancestors belonged to her noble house. Lionel didn't get the full story, but he knew his friend was incredible. Cecily was overjoyed to see her dream realized. To show her thanks, she suggested the two of them go out on the town together. There was a famous cafe nearby they should visit. Lionel loved the idea, and Alastair was ready for an adventure. He agreed, but only if he could bring a guest. Soon, the whole group was inside the cozy cafe. Sarah couldn't get enough of the strawberry pie. Alastair was just happy to see his sister smiling so brightly. Cecily hadn't expected him to have such a darling sister. The compliment made little Sarah blush instantly. Watching her have this much fun was the highlight of Alastair's day. He was genuinely enjoying himself. He never had a moment of peace like this in his previous life. Then, Cecily called for everyone's attention. She offered to play a song. Everyone was curious to hear the music of a divine weapon. She started strumming her lyre, but the sound was truly painful. Her musical skills were honestly non-existent. She was only doing it to make them laugh. The others loved the vibe and begged her to keep playing. She pointed at Lionel, telling him he had to sing. Together, they turned the cafe into a stage. Let's pause for a second. For the first time ever, our hero finally has real friends. Later, they chatted about the fun they had. Cecily wanted to take Sarah out for some new clothes. He didn't want his sister going alone, but Cecily insisted it was a girls' day. Alistair felt a bit left out. He told them to call if anything happened, making Cecily realize what a protective brother he truly was. Sarah asked if she had any siblings, but Cecily sadly admitted she was alone. Suddenly, a stranger appeared looking for her. It was Julian, a member of the student council. It was a cold introduction for two half-siblings. She should have been respectful, but she refused to see him as family. He only wanted her weapon for his wars. She stood her ground, telling him she had zero interest in becoming a tool for battle. Rolling up his sleeves, he muttered how inconvenient her peaceful mindset really was. It looked like he was going to use force. Blood began to seep from his hand until it gushed out intensely. Sarah was terrified by the sight, as the boy began to manipulate the blood as he pleased. A divine weapon of blood. Cecily called for her guard, Mary, but Julian had already anticipated the move. She looked back only to see her bodyguard already defeated. This situation had just turned deadly. Her brother demanded she leave with him, so she screamed for Sarah to run for her life. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see how they survive this brutal attack. All right, you and I are diving into a world of noble betrayal, where things just got very complicated. Lady Sarah is about to be attacked, but her brother's own comrade saves her. Lord Silas falls to the ground looking very weak. It was foolish of her to try, but now she's completely trapped. He uses his magic to bind her, lifting her body off the floor. Lady Sarah is still paralyzed with terror, and the blonde girl is out cold. All of this was caused by her own brother. Feeling desperate, Lady Sarah begs the hero for help. He rushes in immediately, slicing through that boy's tentacles before he can react. The blonde noblewoman has finally been rescued. Seeing that rescue brings Lady Sarah so much relief. Our hero wants to know what this guy wants with his friend. Their pleasant afternoon has been completely ruined. That mysterious noble asks if our hero is just another one of his sister's friends. Not that it really matters, but it's better if he doesn't meddle in the affairs of the great houses. The hero tells Sir Leo to guard the girls because he's got a face to smash, and he's doing it immediately. But the guy is genuinely shocked by that attitude. He warns there's no honor in defending a girl like her. Cutting through those magical attacks with a sword is easy, leaving the guy impressed. Helping a friend is just natural for him. Striking a heavy blow, the guy hides behind a shield, warning that this entire fight is a waste of time. That blood shield is incredibly tough. It looks like a normal sword won't pierce it, and he can't waste mana here. The guy is already winding up for an attack, but our hero manages to dodge just in time. Calling him a pest, he vows to finish this quickly, firing a barrage of magic attacks that are far too predictable. Then the boy draws his heavy fire spitter. Now pay attention. He realizes he's up against someone wielding multiple divine weapons. It's our hero's turn to open fire now, and he's successfully shutting down every single attack coming his way. It looks like they've hit a total stalemate. Being blocked only makes the villain more obsessed with capturing his sister, so he summons a massive spear made of blood. That next move will be the final one. Our hero confirms that he's ready to end this too. The two clash with everything they have. Up on the rooftop, some observers find the whole fight quite interesting. Looking up, they see the newcomers. One knight lands with such power that the stone sidewalk literally shatters under his boots. He drops right between the fighters, showing off his strength. It sounds like he wants to join the brawl as well. The hero recognizes the Knight Council. The blue-haired guy asks what Sir Roland is doing there, but gets told he's being petty. The girl scoffs, calling his behavior embarrassing. She thinks he's nothing more than a total weakling. Seeing his colleagues, he finally calls off the attack, but Sir Z actually wished the fight would have lasted longer. His whole body begins to glow with light as he prepares to go all out, encasing himself in heavy armor. Besides being massive, he's got one hell of a powerful presence. The girl tells the muscular one to do his job, summoning magic chains to keep the boy from doing anything reckless. Let's pause for a second. Feeling that raw magical power, our hero realizes she's incredibly strong. Sir Zo breaks those chains without much effort. He mentions Lady Eveline's duties to the council and Lord Albert. Because of this, he's headed for a month-long expedition deep in the forest, and the task starts right now. He realizes he's got no choice. Leaving the area, he warns he'll be back for his sister in 1 month. The girl waves goodbye to the rookie. What a relief they're gone. Those council knights are absolute monsters. He turns back to check on his friends. Lady Sarah says she's unhurt, but apologizes for dragging him into this. But the hero says it's fine. He just wants to know why she and her brother are constantly fighting. The reason is that he wants to use her now that he's been named the next heir. After graduation, he'll try to expand his territory in the wild lands. Sarah knows those places are filled with monsters. Her brother believes her divine weapon is a key artifact for war, but she has no desire to fight. Her only plan is to grow stronger and become the heir herself. It's the exact same situation our hero faces. The problem is, she's currently powerless. She's nowhere near strong enough to defeat him yet. Lady Sarah says that's not true because she actually managed to protect her. That tiny spark of hope makes her grateful. Even our hero wants to express his thanks, so he approaches the girl to do exactly that. So here's the takeaway: saving others is his real source of power. He tells her to have confidence, because if she lacks strength now, she can always train to be better. Trust me, you and I are about to witness Julian's ultimate test. Lyra promised her help, and she's truly grateful for her new allies. Julian knows that last strike was nearly fatal for him. He only has 1 month before the enemy returns, so Julian needs to get stronger by unlocking his legendary sacred art. To get there, he has to speak with the jester. He needs the ancestors' permission for new powers and must return to that spirit realm. Closing his eyes, he focused, channeling his mana straight through the ancient sheath. The spirits of the past greeted him warmly. It had been quite a long time since their last meeting. Julian has a request, but they already know. They watched his last battle and saw how that cursed artifact caused nothing but total trouble. That man can warp reality at will, much like the legendary kingdom itself. Then, a heavy silence filled the air. Now watch closely here. This is where the training gets intense. The jester warned that burning that cursed blood is the only way to win. The jester agreed to help him, without a second thought. He claimed it was all just a prank, really leaning into his role, while Catherine told him to drop the act. But his power is immense. Being the class clown is fun, but that specific ability drains a massive amount of magic. If Julian used it now, he'd be completely empty in seconds. Of course, there is one condition. Before the rematch, he has to fire 300 shots a day. Only then will the jester grant him that power. Julian can barely manage 100, but the jester hates excuses, telling him to only return once the task is finished. With a simple snap of his fingers, the spirit sent Julian back into his physical body. He realized that despite the jokes, the jester has a bit of a sadistic streak. To use that art, Julian needs to triple his current mana. The problem? That might actually be impossible. Even the ancestors agree this challenge is insane. There is no way he can grow that much, but they are curious. Without that strength, he simply won't win. It is a dead end. Julian headed straight for the Blackwood Forest. He began firing his shots, taking down weak monsters with ease. You and I both know the grind is real. Julian's only path to power is hunting every monster in this forest. He hunts everything in sight. His friends are stunned by his power, and honestly, it is good they tagged along. Everyone wants to level up. That's how she convinced Lady Lyra to join the hunt. Their hunger for power outweighed their fear. Having such loyal friends is clearly helping Julian's progress. After 100 shots, he was exhausted. He grew a little stronger, but it was still nowhere near enough. The progress was too slow. Suddenly, a bone-chilling roar echoed through the trees, and it didn't sound like a normal troll. Fearing his friends were in danger, Julian rushed over, only to find the beast lying motionless on the ground. Standing by the corpse were his two friends, celebrating their victory. Lyra cheered for Julian's hard work. He was shocked they managed to kill it, but that's exactly what happened. That was a high-tier monster. He thought they were weaker, but they used a brilliant strategy to win. First, they surrounded the monster with walls of ice. Then the girl used sound waves that bounced off the ice walls. What a perfect combo. These two have amazing chemistry. That combined strike did the trick. Seeing this gave Julian a brilliant idea of his own. He finally figured out how to fire more shots. But suddenly, more trolls appeared, a whole pack of them. An army that size is a massive problem, especially since everyone is already running on empty. But Julian had a plan. He could still fight. They never expected him to be capable of such power. Seeing him rush off, Lyra remembered he had an important deadline to meet. Back in the spirit realm, the ancestors were stunned to see Julian return so soon. The jester hoped he wasn't there to beg for a deal, but Julian claimed he finished the task already. There was no way he did that in a day. The jester said he's the only one allowed to tell jokes. They demanded he prove it in a duel right then and there. He had to fire every single shot mid-fight and could use any weapon, unless, of course, he was too scared. But Julian loved the challenge. He just waited for the signal to start the fight. Trust me, you and I are about to see him go all out. The signal was given and the duel began. Bell had his flintlock ready, but the jester was quicker, landing the first strike on the boy. The jester mocked his speed, telling him to improve. As the original master, his draw is just legendary. Stick with me, because the jester just entered his 100 jokes mode, and Bell isn't backing down. Volley after volley, they traded fire. Charlotte watched in awe, finally seeing why the elder chose to train him. His master is beaming with pride, but the quiet one warned that the real duel hasn't even started yet. He reminded them to see if the boy can still fire. Even Adam agreed 100 shots weren't enough. The boy pushed his limits, but the jester was barely breaking a sweat. As fatigue set in, Bell's rhythm wavered. Adam counted them, 97 shots total. Now watch this. The jester moves in for the kill, but Bell summons a massive magic shield. That shield forced the jester to rethink. He used the wind, leaving the jester curious. He declared those standard bullets were useless. He infused his shot with a gale, overpowering the jester and leaving him in total shock. This combo boosts his power even with low mana. For once, the jester feels the pressure. Even his mentor didn't expect this. Charla is cheering, hoping he wins. The jester asked why he waited to use this. Bell just smiled. It was time for some payback. But a hidden trick doesn't guarantee victory. Bell had to dodge every shot in this balanced clash. With his mana fading, Bell stayed firm. The situation was getting extremely tense for both sides. He's finally under pressure. Ending this won't be easy against him. He hid behind flames, masking his position. Not only was he blind to the attacks, but a strike to the back revealed the jester's spot. Yet he had already moved, hitting Bell once more before he could react. Look closely, he's cornered. The jester just keeps striking from within the blaze. He needed to blow those flames away with his wind, and he did exactly that. He finally had a clear shot. But he couldn't fire a shot. The spectators feared his mana was dry, but the jester was out of ammo too. The final blow sent him kneeling. Both had been pushed to the brink. Bell managed to fire 301 shots before his body finally gave out. He won by a hair. Impressed by his grit, the jester offered his hand. He had earned his approval, unlocking the divine weapon's true power. With noble grace, he helped the boy up. Bel was grateful his skills were recognized, though he still needed to master that divine flintlock. With this new power, he's ready to crush that other royal bastard. The jester truly wants his pupil to win, and Bel promised him victory. Days pass, and our hero keeps training in the forest to reach new heights. He's refining his skills as friends arrive. That ability is wild. Tips, please. Just keep slaying monsters. That's it. He has one method from Master. Sit down, close eyes, and focus. By using this hand gesture, they can circulate mana throughout their entire bodies. It makes releasing power much easier. And that's where we leave it. Think this training works. All right, let's dive into this epic journey, where Arthur's allies start channeling mana at a terrifying pace. Their progress was way beyond average. Arthur knew he couldn't fall behind, so he doubled down on his training. Pushing his limits would finally awaken his true hidden power. 5 days passed in a blur of steel and sweat. By day 10, they were already dueling to reach new heights. After a month of grueling work, that arrogant noble finally showed his face again to cause more trouble. This time, he brought backup to snatch Arthur's sister, but Alinor wasn't the same helpless girl they remembered. Lord Malphaz ordered his knight to grab the girl while he handled our hero. That knight thought it would be an easy capture, but Alinor instantly unleashed her relic to strike him down immediately. The servant was lightning fast, dodging every blow. Liam wasn't about to let his friend fight alone. He charged in fiercely, refusing to let them take Alinor away from their protection without a fight. On the other side, Arthur was ready for blood, but first he had one final question to ask. Why was this monster targeting his own sister? Her relic controls minds through haunting melodies, a truly terrifying power. With her, he could turn whole armies into puppets, making his conquest far too easy. You and I can see how disgusting this guy is. He really treats his own sister like a common tool. Arthur didn't need to hear another word. This man didn't deserve to be called a brother anymore. Malphaz laughed, thinking anger wouldn't help, but he was about to see something he never expected. He watched in confusion as Arthur pointed his mystic flintlock at his own chest to trigger his ability. Blue flames erupted, searing into his very heart. This was the legendary soul incineration technique. It was an incredible sight. Even the villain had to admit that this was going to be troublesome. Radiant wings burst from Arthur's back, as his physical strength and speed surged well past all human limits. He vanished, reappearing instantly before his foe. Malphaz desperately fired off several magic shots in response. It was useless. Arthur's flames incinerated the blood magic instantly, catching the arrogant noble completely off guard. The time for talk was over. Arthur was going to end him. As a massive punch came flying in, Malphaz conjured a magical shield to protect his pathetic life. The barrier held against the first strike, but it shattered instantly, leaving him wide open for the second. Arthur's fist connected right with his face, sending him flying like a rag doll. His forbidden blood magic was completely useless now. He should have stayed down, but this monster wasn't finished. Malphaz struggled back to his feet again. His eyes shifted, and his skin hardened into scales. It looked like the very blood in his veins was boiling. Pay attention here, because the power shifting in the air right now is absolutely insane. That was pure dragon's blood. He was transforming into a half-dragon monstrosity with power that defied all logic. The pressure was crushing. He told Arthur to feel both pride and regret for witnessing this form. Those razor-sharp claws were ready. He was about to unleash his full draconic fury. Arthur tracked his opponent's movement carefully. Using his enhanced reflexes, he barely managed to dodge. A shallow cut opened on his cheek. Malphaz was stunned that he had missed the mark. While he was distracted, Arthur retaliated, blasting a wave of intense soul pyre flames directly at him. He triggered a massive explosion, turning the entire area into a wasteland. Smoke filled the air, but the dragon man stood there completely untouched. He called the attack pathetic and weak. Not a single scale was scorched or damaged by those flames. He lunged at Arthur again, desperate to tear him limb from limb. Magic wasn't working anymore. Arthur decided he would have to crush this monster with his bare fists. The two warriors collided head-on, Arthur barely twisting away from those lethal claws. He found an opening and landed a heavy blow to the beast's side, but it didn't even flinch. Those draconic scales were just too tough to break. For a split second, Arthur hesitated. That's when the dragon's tail whipped around, slamming him into the dirt. As 𝒂𝒅𝒂𝒏 prepared a finishing spell, Arthur had to act fast, throwing a desperate fireball to counter the strike. And that's where we leave it for now. Our hero is completely exhausted, and things are looking very grim. Stick with me, as our hero is pushed to his absolute breaking point. That ancient dragon was ready to launch even more lethal attacks, making his survival a total nightmare. Our hero needed to burn through even more mana, while his knights below were trapped in their own war. Facing a high-tier threat, the group prepared a combo while the silent enemy waited for their first move. Sir Leo was the first to charge, forcing the opponent to raise his guard and defend. The boy slammed his spear down, making the foe realize too late he was trapped by towering ice walls. Now it was the lady's turn. She rushed forward, blasting her foe with devastating and powerful sound waves. That combo had crushed stronger monsters before, so they truly believed the battle was already won. But the Dark Knight laughed it off and slammed his staff heavily into the cold stone ground. A mysterious dark circle appeared, swallowing every bit of that sound attack until absolutely nothing remained. Now pay attention, because the kids are about to face an attack capable of wiping them out completely. The dark portal expanded, firing those absorbed sound waves right back at them with twice the original power. She was in shock as the knight apologized, saying he had to capture her by his master's orders. Leo was not letting that happen. The knight warned him to stay back, but the stubborn boy wouldn't listen and got brutally subdued because of his lack of experience. The girl watched her friend getting crushed and felt completely helpless in that moment. Desperate to help, she couldn't move her frozen body while the poor boy continued to take a brutal, one-sided beating. She prayed for strength, remembering the hero's lesson that training would eventually unlock her true potential during the heat of combat. She just needed to calm down and focus on the dormant mana, currently flowing within her own heart. Ready to fight, she moved to save her friend before that heavy iron staff could crush his skull completely. But new sound waves cut through the air, giving Leo a chance to react just in time. He wasn't going down yet, and the knight looked genuinely confused by what was actually happening. You and I can see the power of that melody, as her beautiful song transforms into pure physical strength for the young warrior. Now he was the one pushing back, knocking the enemy knight completely off his balance with sheer force. The knight couldn't believe this kid's strength, as a divine weapon began to glow with intense freezing energy. Massive ice pillars erupted from the floor, and the knight knew he was in deep trouble. He couldn't absorb all that magic and got swallowed by ice, while the hero reached his limit above. The air battle was ending, but he saw that his loyal friends had finally won their fight. Now he just had to finish this beast once and for all, by gambling everything on his secret hidden trump card. The dragon was shocked to realize the boy had been hiding his true power all along. But it wouldn't matter, because the boy was about to experience a level of true despair. The clash intensified even more as the dragon boosted its power, preparing to unleash one final and devastating blow. Our hero knew the dragon's ultimate strike was coming, so he just had to survive long enough for his secret plan to work. The beast finally finished charging and unleashed all that massive energy directly at the protagonist. That energy sphere was gargantuan, a terrifying sight that made things look impossible for the boy. He had to move fast, launching his own flames to stop the attack from hitting him head-on. But the dragon poured in even more power, a force that our hero simply could not withstand. Completely overpowered, it seemed like the battle for the kingdom was finally over. That wasn't the exciting finish the dragon wanted, But then he suddenly realized the boy had appeared right behind him. He got too distracted by his own attack and completely forgot to defend his blind spot. While the dragon was charging all that power, the boy had used a flame clone as a decoy, a master-level skill that the beast never thought he could pull off. Pure confidence now. The dragon thought he was safe because the boy's hits were weak, but training changes everything. He had mastered his mana, and the dragon could feel the raw energy coating his arm. So let's see how this punch lands, because that dragon is in for a world of pain. Let's dive into this boy's epic blue flame trump card. He smashes his fist into the enemy's back with glorious power, shattering dragon scales and leaving the beast in agony. No one believed a mere child could conquer a high-ranking lord like this. When the dust settles, the lord opens his eyes to find his entire body frozen solid in ice. Both the lord and his knight had been crushed. It took some time, but they finally regained their senses. The dragon thought these kids were just a nuisance, but even after a total defeat, he remains strangely calm. Lady Alara has a final warning for him. She refuses to be his pawn or let him start a bloody war between noble houses. He needs to understand that right now. Now pay attention, because he actually agrees to her terms, leaving everyone in the room feeling completely stunned and doubtful. Even so, Lyra dispels her divine blade, letting the thick ice melt away. The girl tells him never to return. Without a word, he signals his mage to follow him as they vanish into the distance. That duel drained everyone. It is honestly insane that our protagonist managed to take down a member of the High Council. Arthur admits it was a close call. Alara stands up to thank her allies, vowing to repay their kindness one day. But they are true friends, and that is not how loyalty works. Wait, let's appreciate this. She corrects him, they are best friends, which makes Arthur's entire day. After this clash, the rest of the High Council will definitely be hunting them down. He needs to get stronger to face Alistair. He will not let another tragedy strike his family again. Arthur will become the kingdom's strongest knight. He will eventually challenge his brother, reclaim his titles, and lead the noble house himself. This time, he will protect his sister. Years pass by, and a new, even deadlier battle is about to begin. Arthur finally tracks down his older brother, but Julian is more powerful than ever before. Julian is now the head of the house, but he ignores his titles. He claims a dark curse haunts his younger brother. In his past life, Arthur failed to protect his loved ones. The weight of that failure and the intense suffering never left him. That is why he is here. Having faced true despair, there is no enemy left that can stop him. With his sister's life on the line, Arthur prepares to fight Julian. He believes he and I will finally change this destiny. He strikes his brother with every ounce of power.